We're live and we are purple raining. Positively purple raining nostalgia on the live stream Doctor Who magazine show, Rumble, X, YouTube and Facebook, as ever, covering all things Doctor Who from right the way back then to the right here and the right now, all in front of a live chat full of fellow friends, fans and companions just like you. And another gap filled in the collection, the Steely collection, and a very specific season, all repackaged, all repainted and repurposed for us here as the season 21 box set is with us at long last. Can't wait to talk about that. And as well as all of that, we'll be filling you in on the voices, the sights and the places of 84. Welcome back to Type 40 Live. Here we are again, nestled into the correct console room as well. Set the desktop theme to 1984, and one of many happy places. There's not many classic series junctions that aren't, come to think of it. Well, certainly not for me anyway. As Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks. We'll find out who you are in a moment or two and when you were in 1984, if you were around, of course, that is, because there's been a few trips around the sun now since 84, hasn't there? As I'm increasingly reminded by my own children with regularity. But we carry on anyway, we persevere and we rattle on about it nonetheless. There's a good excuse this time, of course, none better than celebrating a whole season of classic Doctor Who and pushing the correct buttons, of course, pulling the levers and still hoping for the best. We've got an assortment of panelists to bring on as ever. Some were there, some weren't. But they're all definitely present, relatively correct, and in fine voice with the settings adjusted accordingly, I think. So are we raring to go? I think we may be. So he's running neon blue, which is just right, I feel, to fit in with the time. It's the well-shacketed Mr. Luke Walters.
Hello. Yeah, I was not around in the 80s, evidently. I know I look boyishly young, so yeah. Hey, Wales didn't lose at the weekend at rugby because we didn't play. Six Nations is over, thank God for that. Oh wait, no, we've had this conversation on Monday. Oh no.
That's one way of making sure that you don't lose by not playing at all.
Yeah. Oh my God, I thought it was next week. Oh, this is so confusing. See, two Type 40s in a week is just mind blowing now.
Traveling back in time, we've blown your mind already and blown out your senses. It can only get better, Luke. It can only get better from here, can't it? It was good to see you anyway, even if you don't know which day of the week it is. We'll fill you in somewhere. I think I would look on the screen on the right-hand side. I think that's where that readout comes through. It may look like a shitty BBC micrographic from the early 80s, but it will all make sense. If you stare at it for long enough, it all makes sense.
Yeah, hope so, because this is a very confusing week. And hello, everyone in the chat. Hello, it's Stephen. Hello, but yeah, it's been a very confusing. We used to do this quite regularly, 2 in a week. This is so confusing for my head after doing one. Jeez.
Well, hopefully you'll be acclimatized in record time. And if I can't ease the pain for you, I think that Gary Akers will be more than willing to hold his end up.
I have no interest in easing Luke's pain.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to put that out right now. I know it's
anyone else on this show apart from Gary Akers. Jeez.
I know it's Thursday when I get a peek at Luke's NASA grade microphone there talking to the International Space Station.
Yeah, it's signaling for those aliens. Apparently, we're going to get a UFO dump soon from a certain president. So we shall see.
But I'm totally ready for our 1984 talk. I got my little Davison action figure there. There you go.
Perfect. We should superimpose him. So he's sort of floating around this, should we? That'd be pretty good. 1980s style, so the green screen style. So he's got that fuzzy line around the outside, Gary. That'd look pretty good, wouldn't it?
That's right. Yes, just him floating around. Yes.
Which jumper is he
this
wearing?
This doesn't have the hat. I sort of wish I had the variant with the hat, but because I really like that. But I think this was the
some had
later
hats.
One. Yeah,
some had celery. I'm not quite sure which one mine is now, but of course the sweater, the all important sweater, which they changed half the way through this. But the thing about this whole time for me, Gary, was at the time I was learning how to use a computer for the very first time. We just had a computer at primary school. We'd got one for the entire school, which they put on a trolley, and they would wheel around from classroom to classroom. And we all had, I think we had a set block of time, about 2 hours a week on it, something like that. But it was a BBC Micro, and all of the graphics on both of the games that we had, or demonstrations more so than games, were very similar, eerily similar to any display you would ever see on this console room back in the mid-80s. So that was what it was like being a schoolboy back in 1984. Now, I know that neither of you were there, because one of you wasn't in the UK, the other one wasn't around, didn't exist. But I suspect that David Milling may have some similar memories banked up. Are you familiar with any of that talk, David? Does that make any sense?
Good evening, everybody. Hello, the chat. Hello, all. Yeah, I do. I remember the trolley because there were two trolleys. There was a computer trolley, and there was the TV with doors on.
The tower.
Trolley.
The tower.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember them well, very well, and in awe of this BBC microcomputer. I do feel that Luke may be stuck in the Dalek's time corridor, because he can't remember what he's talked about already. But
yeah, it's been a long day.
So he's going back and forth between that warehouse and the Dalek mothership. But yeah, I have to say, probably because it was a console that I most remember as a young kid. I was 7 at the start of this season 21. So this is a console that I absolutely adore, and I thought at the time it was like, wow, isn't this fantastic?
Super duper.
You know, it's a bit of Star Wars. State of the art. You know, state of the art. And I loved the way that the central column just went up and down so smoothly, you know, and rather than you could hear the plunger going. And next,
it would always judder before, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
I got the impression it was on some sort of hydraulic when they brought this one in.
Yes, you could hear that. In fact, you could hear the hydraulic. And next to the original console, which will always remain my favorite. This is a very, very, this is almost neck and neck for the best console out there. Far better than anything that we've ever had since.
You'll be pleased to learn that David, that a lot like the TV tower that they used to wheel in for kids to watch television in during school time in the 80s, that console room is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the levels of nostalgia we're going to bring you on this edition of Type 45. We're going right back to the 80s to take it all in, whether you were there or not. I mean, just seeing this just takes me hurtling back around the globe, settling down to watch Doctor Who or one of a number of shows. Come to think of it, we were a BBC household. We rarely turned over to the Light Channel, Gary, and my mother was a terrible snob. I'm not quite sure whether it was, I think her attitude at the time was, well, we have to pay for the BBC, so I'll watch the BBC. But there was something very sort of proper about the BBC material back then, as we saw. I mean, who could have predicted that all this time later? You know, I videoed a lot of this material that we're going to talk about, and I watched it, and here I am 4 decades later, buying it all in these new box sets with cutting edge technology and fancy packaging, beautiful artwork. The same episodes, though, the same thrilling adventures inside. And my childhood hero, the Fifth Doctor. This was my Doctor, and this was my time as sort of a Doctor that was all of my own, really. And it's weird that all these decades on, that his place in history is very much set, and that Peter Davison, who was such an in-demand actor at the time, and familiar through 2 or 3 sort of really key roles, now I'd say is not only chiefly remembered for being Doctor Who, but he seems happier with it than ever, more than content to tug on the cricket jumper one more time, even if he does sort of feign indignance about it. And yeah, but he's part of the pantheon of classic Doctors, and it's still taken its place in history. But whenever I sort of press play on any of these episodes again and see that title sequence kick in, which this couldn't be any more 80s, could it, Luke? You know, this takes me right back to those not Saturday tea times back then, but other sort of nights of the week. You couldn't get more sort of Quantel than seeing Peter Davison's face form with all these sort of blobs and stars, could you?
I don't know. I wasn't alive then. I got a DVD of it. It's brilliant.
He's going to be saying that about 75 times during the stream.
That's literally all I'm saying. So I'm just going to get a sign.
Get used to,
But if you go,
you'll get used to the term Quantel. You'll get used to the term Quantel, Luke. Believe me.
What I'm saying is, if you go back and look at sort of other material from around the time, from the boom of MTV, it all pretty much looks like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great time. It was a great time for for Doctor Who. I was watching. I might be jumping ahead, but I was watching the what was it? Warriors of the Deep, and it just reminded me of the Crystal Maze. The entire time I was watching it, I was like,
"Yeah,
oh, this actually looks like the Crystal Maze."
I thought you said you were watching it on crystal meth for a minute. I thought it's bad, but it's
probably
not
was.
Bad.
Yeah.
Might have made it more enjoyable.
Yeah, so this is where we talk about all things Doctor Who. Of course it is, but on our big event shows, we unashamedly we go deep on every subject, and we bring you more of the sights and the sounds and the flavour of the time to kind of transport us all back there, whether we want to be or not. For the rants and the raves, undoubtedly, your favourites or not so much, and we'll pick our way through that brand new box set itself, of course, won't we? The Star Wars trilogy had wrapped the year before, and Doctor Who had started to become the butt of a few jokes, so they upgraded this TARDIS just in the nick of time, really, a few months earlier as part of the Five Doctors. And although it did sort of keep that homespun style, the Doctor still used to bring down a fist on top of the monitors, didn't he, David? Do you remember when it wasn't going his way? I think that was enough of the old charm to bring through, as if to say, it doesn't matter what we do, how the casing is updated, this is still the same sort of cozy, warm and cheap show. So if something does drop off it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, definitely. I believe in the Five Doctors, Tegan refers to it as a rackety old TARDIS. And it is a rackety old TARDIS. It's still the same rackety old TARDIS, and it still needs a little bit of encouragement and persuasion and coaxing and charm. And but a good old bang on the console top with the old hand. With I was going to say a good bang with the fist, but you got to be careful what you say. A good old thump on the console. It seems to give it that persuasion and charm and coaxing that it requires. But it's just a wonderful time. Wonderful time.
Of course, in terms of gadgets, this was what it was all about back then. This was the very first Apple Mac computer, the Macintosh. This arrived in the February of 1984. It was launched officially, Gary, at the Super Bowl that year with an elaborate advert, a short film directed by the great Ridley Scott, who'd, I think, when was Alien? Alien had come out in 79, hadn't it? He'd done Blade Runner in 82. So right off the back of that, he was probably the biggest film director in the world, or certainly regards sci-fi. And it was sort of pitched as this dystopian short film where the big innovation was the Apple Mac, and it was going to revolutionize computing, which was still quite young then, wasn't it? Home computing in particular. So I think it was about another 10 years though until I got my hands on a Mac. Do you remember all of this?
Well, I actually I haven't seen this ad before, but I think this is a genius marketing concept, is because basically you're basically leaning into the idea that this is like a huge change for people, the idea of a computer in your home, because how many decades have we seen, like, we think of computers, on TV or movies, the big full wall size computers, that take up a whole room and everything. And that's what people thought of as computers. So to acknowledge that and say, hey, no, this is a computer. If you're intimidated or you're confused, this one is for you. This is, because that's computers in the home, that was a pretty massive cultural change, Dan.
It was. I mean, they do make a virtue here of the fact, Luke, that it was the first Apple you can carry in a bag, because Apple had been around for about 20 years at this point, but the computers were the size of your box room. A great many of them. They were bloody huge. But this was the version of sort of portability that you had in the 80s, and then there was the big slot at the front you could jam your floppy into, and
what?
And you were good to go.
Well, I bet Granny Smith would have something to say about the first Apple you can carry around in
Yeah.
a bag. So Steve Jobs has a lot to answer for, and so does Ridley Scott
That's not
for
a
those
court case.
really terrible Gladiator films that have been coming out recently. Yeah, and you see, like everyone's like is in the office today, and everyone is on an Apple. Literally, they are.
Yeah.
Rumor has it this is still Gary's computer now because he's that old.
How dare you?
Yeah, he bought it then and there. So rumor has it he's
Hanging
still
on to
running
it.
this with his
Hanging on to it
3.5
from
inch
all the way.
floppy.
Isn't it amazing that you've now got tablets with bigger screens than that Macintosh? It's just
But you know
amazing,
what?
isn't it?
I'm
I've got
actually
my sign ready. I've got my sign ready. I can just hold that up all
There
day.
you go. I'm actually still kind of mad. You know, whenever I turn on my computer, I'm still kind of mad where I don't hear the whole, the old sound of like, and I still miss that.
Or that you can hear the gerbils or the hamsters turning on the wheel.
The last time we got together and talked about a whole season's worth of classic Doctor Who, it was 1975 that we were celebrating, and we took a look at some of the other pop culture topics and moments that were happening back then, one of which was the release of the first Jaws movie. And wouldn't you know it, that around this time in 1984, according to my own diary, which I have next to me from all that time ago, Jaws 3, which had come out the previous year in the States, this was in the cinema round about now. And sure enough, in my own diary, I've got an early listing login saying that I did go and see Jaws 3 in 3D in January of 1984, and you know what? I do still have the glasses, but this is, you can see, it's in here. It's all logged. This is how meticulous I was. It was all movies and TV and going to school. That was my life. So I've been able to go back to this relic and just check my facts and check my thinking that I'm not falsely remembering any of this stuff, Gary. But Jaws 3 was definitely a moment. I saw that in 3D. I think I may have blocked it out since. Not many people have a lot of love for this, but the great white shark there. But the big hit movie at the time was actually this. It was Say Hello to My Little Friend. Scarface was the big movie in cinemas at the time that season 21 was being aired, David. You must have seen this. Everybody can do this impression, can't they? You're going to give it a go.
I've never seen it. Sorry, sacrilege.
Say hello to my little friend. I bet you can do it, can't you, Luke?
Yes, I can, but people will have to pay for that. I'm not giving away stuff for free online at this point in this stage. If you want to see it, visit my Patreon. The Type 40 After Dark. There you go.
Yes, say hello to my little friend, said Al Pacino as Scarface. Scarface, Gary. Is this a favourite of yours from way back with Michelle Pfeiffer looking ridiculously hot, directed by Brian De Palma, and a great cast as well. Screenplay by Oliver Stone, music by Giorgio Moroder. Look at all those names.
As much as I love Michelle Pfeiffer, I've actually not seen this movie, but I think I can do the line. I think it's like, say hello to my little friend. Wasn't it like that? Something like that.
Brilliant. I think that's the trick.
Rumor has it it's actually based on Gary's life.
Are you feeling all right, Gary?
You better hope not, Luke. You better hope not.
I can't wait to go over to the live chat and see what they've got to say about all of this. So yeah, I was too little to go and watch this. I never heard of Scarface until the 90s. So yeah, I couldn't go and see this, but I could go and see practically anything else because it was 50p all in at my local cinema, as long as you looked like you're over 15. So I could go and see both Risky Business and Footloose. Risky Business was a huge hit at the time in Britain. Gary, big hit movie. It wasn't Tom Cruise's first film by a long chalk. I think it was like fourth or fifth, something like that. But this was the breakout one for him.
It was.
All those moments. It was the shades. It was the socks. It was the white shirt, and sort of he would enter the room sort of glide across the wood polished floor, wouldn't he? Dancing away like that. And then you got Kevin Bacon to cutting Footloose in one of the biggest films of the year. That was already out in the States around the same time season 21 was broadcast, but we had to wait a little bit longer to get that in Britain. How about these, Gary? Did you have a Walkman? Did you jive like Kevin Bacon?
I never slid across the floor in my socks like Tom Cruise. But no, Footloose was great, and it had a great soundtrack, and the soundtrack was a big hit too. It had like Footloose, it had like Holding Out for a Hero, it had Let's Hear It for the Boy. It had like a lot of songs that made the charts.
Because the truth of the matter was, MTV, I think MTV launched the year before, didn't it, David? And even though we didn't have it in Britain, the effect was unmistakable. It sort of changed everything. We'd had pop videos for a time, but they became a sort of assault on the senses, really. Ridiculously exciting and colourful and full of attitude. And so the films did too.
Yeah, it was a huge sort of explosion of pop sort of culture, because you had the birth of MTV, and the videos before that had just been, I know Luke's opinion on Bohemian Rhapsody video, but which I absolutely adore. But videos were
the film or the
pop video.
Incredible.
But this sort of took the explosion of MTV then took pop videos to a whole new different genre and a whole new different height. And the thing with the poster of Drew Struzan, of whom we featured on our sister show a few months ago, was just able to, with his absolute brilliant artistic work, just make a movie look so enticing. You just had to go and see it. And it was a state of art in itself. So it was just a brilliant time for movies, for artwork, for movies, and for the brilliant pop videos. And they just got crazier and crazier and more expensive and just even better and better and better. And it was like, it's almost sent a message out to TV and film. Hey, it's not all about your movies. You try and keep up with us. And there was this sort of ongoing competition as to what could be more outrageous, a pop video or a movie, with special effects and Michael Jackson's hair being set on fire, and all that sort of thing by mistake, and it even fed its way through to commercials.
An exciting time on British television. Doctor Who didn't have much in the way of competition for the geeky among us, but the big breakout show at that time was ITV's Spitting Image, made by Central, not far from where I'm sat right now. It was made in Birmingham originally, and all those puppets, the big latex puppets of politicians and pop stars and the royal family, they were all there in the mix, voiced by the likes of Chris Barry from Red Dwarf. He did a lot of that, and various other sort of big names that you would definitely recognise from sitcoms, and an army of writers there contributed to the long-term success of Spitting Image, very much a product of its time back in 1984. But yeah, music was where it was at, Gary. I remember at the time the slogan was that the British are coming, because we were sort of invading, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, invading the American charts, weren't we? I think we'd hit big with the Beatles, and then we'd gone away, and then we came back, didn't we, with Boy George, Karma Chameleon, and it was a huge hit at this time in 1984. It'd come out a few months earlier in Britain, so it had been a big hit here, and then you guys got it, and it became a hit. It became a hit all over again. And Culture Club were my favourite band then. They're probably still one of my favourite bands now. But Boy George was one of the faces of the year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, New Wave had been around for a couple 3 years, by this time, and that was really driven by a lot of the British groups. I loved. What do we have? Duran Duran, the Police.
Birmingham's own Duran Duran.
They first
Tears for Fears, I think, and they had a lot of, movie music, like, you know, Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
And Queen, of course.
Lots of great
Queen,
bands.
of course,
Ballet,
have been around
Thompson
for,
Twins, Queen.
you know, New Order. I love New Order.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood as well.
Well, in return, it's funny you should say that. In return, you sent us Lionel Richie and the fabulous record "Hello."
Oh, I apologize for that.
That was the big record at this time in 1984 in Britain, and it was in the charts for a really, really long time. And
I can do that song too.
Oh, please.
The thing is,
hello, is it me you're looking for?
You see,
can I go? Can I go?
It's just like the original, isn't it?
I'm starting to well up, Gary. You're going to have to leave it there because that music video, you know, that was a big deal at the time. That had a massive effect on everybody who saw it, because I think it was one of the first videos I remember watching that told a proper story that was sort of bookended with drama. I mean, you'd got the excessive things that Michael Jackson was doing, but this was a little less showy, shall we say? And there was almost sort of proper acting in it. But I think if you've not seen the video to "Hello," and lots of you probably haven't, you go and Google that later on, or pop it into YouTube.
I don't remember that one.
Watch the full thing. Yeah, it's great stuff. But that single was massive, but there was the biggest song of the time. You couldn't hear, and David mentioned it a moment ago, but it was a huge hit, sold by the bucket load, but you couldn't hear it on the radio because the BBC had banned it. Frankie Goes to Hollywood with "Relax," simply because of some of the lyrics. It was a big club hit, a gay anthem then. It probably still is now. A great record. But the idea that, I think it was Mike Reed on Radio 1 who refused to play this initially, and then they all followed suit. But yeah, the biggest record in the country. And you'd watch Top of the Pops, and they'd do the countdown, and they'd play everything else. And then they get to this, and they'd say, "Oh, number one, Frankie Goes to Hollywood." And then they cut to the end titles. They couldn't play the thing. So it was all a bit of a farce.
The story behind it, and I'll keep it brief, is that on one morning of the week, Mike Reed would play the top 5 singles. He'd recap the top 40. And because he'd been talking so much about his guitar and him playing guitar and, all that sort of rubbish stuff that he used to talk about, he'd not back-timed correctly. So they didn't have time to play all the top 3. So the early jock, Adrian John, basically said, "Oh God, have you seen the cover of this? Have you seen the lyrics?" And he said, "Oh well, if we're going to drop something, we're going to drop that." So it wasn't the fact that he initially banned it. It was the fact that by his own buggering around with his schedule, he hadn't timed things properly, so he had to drop a record. Then obviously the video became available, and they went, "Oh, can't show that on kids' TV." But ironically, before when it charted quite low in the top 40, and they actually did perform it on Top of the Pops, but then because the rest of the BBC initially they did, the rest of the BBC just then went, "Oh," and that just the press just went, "Oh, BBC ban this," and within a moment's notice, it had gone from about 30 odd in the charts to number 1. So
what is it they say, David? There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Absolutely. And Trevor Horn was rubbing his hands with glee because, of course, he produced all of Frankie Goes to Hollywood's stuff, and it was the best news that they could have had. So if you want your record to do well, get the BBC to ban it. It's fantastic.
The biggest star on the planet, though, was still Michael Jackson. As David mentioned a moment ago, he had a terrible time filming a promotional item for Pepsi. Now, Pepsi had entered into a big promo deal with Michael Jackson. He'd had a huge year in '84, and they were filming some elaborate video where Michael Jackson got hit in the head with a giant fireball. I can't think of any other way of describing this, which did end up having long-term health consequences for the singer, obviously for the king of pop. And there he was. I mean, we didn't see much in the way of imagery or footage coming out of this event, this accident at the time. It's a lot more widely spoken of now because there were legal ramifications as well. Yeah. But the sight of the sparkly glove clad Michael Jackson there being stretched away, like, you know, as if the edible has just kicked in. It's leave me alone. It's that kind of image. We didn't really know what to make of that at the time, but it was a huge news story. And Michael Jackson was definitely the biggest star of the time. But it's funny how in the media, though, back then, Gary, what was often the case, and it was easy, obviously, with stories from overseas, is that we only found out, we were only told what they wanted to tell us, and we just accepted it and moved on with the rest of our day.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything wasn't as, you know, anything that happens in the world now, it's instantly on social media like 3 seconds later. And I think they were able to keep a lot of things like this, the details like on the down low. If social media had existed back then, no way.
Oh, God,
there'd be pictures of it, you know, everywhere. But
it was around this time that Freddie Mercury was actually recording songs with Michael Jackson, doing collaborations. And the Queen's manager, Jim Beach, who they used to call Miami, obviously, because, you know, Freddie had a name for everybody. So apparently Jim Beach says one day he got a phone call from, it was probably before the accident, but he said, oh, darling Miami, can you fly over here and get me out of here? He's brought a fucking llama into the studio today, and it's sort of starting to weird me out. Get me out of here.
To say that he was eccentric is putting it mildly. That has to be acknowledged. In Britain, though, the toast of the entire nation really was, and you know what it's like with us British. You know, when we win something, we never stop going on about it. And the toast of the nation was still the victory of Torvill and Dean at the Winter Olympics on Valentine's Day. They skated their way to gold there in the ice, dancing the bolero in these everything about this, the photography, the routine itself, the music, it's all iconic. Even all these years on, 42 years on, they were everywhere, this pair, and they kind of still are. In fact, I think they've only just retired. Maybe they've retired 2 or 3 times, and they keep coming back out of retirement to dance this routine one more time. But it got to the point where it seemed to be on television, on a loop, really, Luke. I mean, you know what we're like when we win something, you know, whether it's the Welsh, the English, the Scots, or all of us together. We never stop banging on about it. And you must have heard of Torvill and Dean.
Well, the English keep banging on about it, but that's the story for a different day. If someone wins something if someone Welsh, Irish, Northern Irish, or Scottish win it, then they're British.
See, Luke's just being modest. I happen to know that when he's not filming on the weekends, he does ice dancing. So, but now he's trying to.
Yeah, I wasn't bad ice skating when I was younger. I just literally took to it instantly. It was the most bizarre thing in the world. I know Torvill and Dean, of course. Yeah, the Boleroids. I mean, they will go down in history and gets repeated on Dancing on Ice consistently every time it rolls around on screen. So thanks for that, Torvill and Dean. It's ruined my Sunday evening. Not that I watched on ice.
It did. Yeah, I must admit, it did go on your pecs after a little while. You'd hear the opening bars sort of kick in, but that was probably the main theme of 1984. Come to think of it, where did Doctor Who fit into it? Well, Doctor Who was it was still moving around, really. So it was on Thursdays and Fridays, apart from when it was on Wednesdays and running for twice as long. So it was quite confusing. Peter Davison, he'd announced that he was leaving the previous year, which I've got to be honest, I was devastated by this. He was my Doctor Who. But obviously time moves a little slower when you're 8 or 9. So he had a little while to hang around. And this third season, he seemed more formidable, more comfortable, more dashing, and more sci-fi, I think, than ever, really settled into the character. But they also chose this season, didn't they, to debut his successor, Colin Baker. I didn't know what to make of him. I don't think many school kids actually did, but they went hard on promoting him, and by the time that these episodes were actually on screen, Colin Baker had also done several sort of press calls in costume and with his new companion, and they'd even sort of buddied him up Butch and Sundance style with Peter Davison for an appearance on Hearty, which was a kind of late night talk show. It was the Graham Norton show of its day, Luke, if you like. It was hosted by another gay guy late at night, making acerbic, sarcastic comments, usually about what they were wearing. But this is a charming clip, an interview if you've never seen. It's sort of talking about what advice would you give to the new guy and all that kind of thing. And Peter Davison looking like he was on his way somewhere far, far posher than he needed to be. Have you ever seen this clip, Gary? I think it could have been on one of the DVDs before.
I haven't yet. I mean, that would be great. I mean, I was thinking
lovely.
that Peter Davison is kind of like he looks like his Campion character that he would do like a few years later.
Very much so. And what I found strange about seeing him at the time, because obviously he dyed his hair, he put highlights in his hair to play the Doctor for the most part. So he was still blonde, but not quite so blonde when you'd see him sort of out of character and things like that. And he obviously was very keen to get on to do other things, to take other work. He was famously worried about being typecast. And sure enough, he sort of was, really. I understand that it did lead eventually to a bit of a career lull for him, but not for another few years. I suppose everybody sort of falls in and out of favour and fashion. But when you look back and you see items like this and the way that they sat there around the coffee table too, David, this is how chat shows used to look, isn't it? There was no giant red levers, and there was certainly no effing and blind, and even late at night.
Absolutely not. And I love the fact that they've got a caravan style banquette that they're all sort of sat on as well. And but yeah, Russell, I do actually remember, I have seen this on the DVD, and I believe the day after the transmission for part 4 of Androzani went out, they're also on Saturday Superstore, because I do remember vividly watching that and just thinking, can't they bring Peter Davison back? Can they bring him back, please? I was sort of like hoping to myself that they would bring him back, because I was absolutely devastated, really, really devastated that he'd left. And Russell Harty, of course, very famous for turning his back on Grace Jones and finding out what happened when he did that. That's another great Russell Harty clip to go and watch, Gary, as well. Russell Harty and Grace Jones. But yes, it was just that sort of chat show Wogan sort of style, which was very, I think Parkinson had sort of started it off, but then others had sort of taken over his sort of mantle when he'd gone, and it was just a joy to watch. Although I do wish they could have brought Peter Davison back, because I wasn't very happy.
I can't believe we're talking about 1984, right? We went through Lionel Richie and everything, and not one of us mentioned the Karate Kid.
Well, it wasn't out until the summer. I mean, we were right on the threshold, because I was of that time, so I was 10 when all of this was happening, and I'd just been. I'd got to the point, Luke, where my mother would let me go to the cinema on my own, and a few weeks on from this, it all sort of started. The real blockbuster age really started to kick in. Supergirl, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Splash, The Karate Kid, The Terminator, which sadly I wasn't able to get in to see. All those films, they started to, like, first it was 1 or 2 a month, and then it was every week, just great family movie after great family movie. There's things like the Goonies and Gremlins, all these films sort of, and by the end of, when was it, the 85, it was Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Christmas of 84. So things sort of accelerated as blockbuster cinema really took off. It kind of, with what you were saying earlier on about the soundtracks being such a big part of it, Gary, it's as if all of culture sort of coalesced and all of these things tied together so beautifully and whipped us all up into a frenzy, really.
I mean, the one thing I loved about like most 80s movies is it always seemed over the end credits, you either had an already really popular song or a song that became popular because it was in the movie. Everybody Wants to Rule the World was in Real Genius, you know, but that's where people became exposed to, or
Cruel Summer from Bananarama was in The Karate Kid.
Was in Karate Kid, or the Breakfast Club song.
Simple Minds, Don't You Forget
Simple
About
Minds,
Me.
Don't Forget About Me. It's like when I hear those songs, you immediately think of the movie. And it was great because it made going to the movie for me like that much more exciting. But no, 84 was a great year. I mean, fantasy movies too. I mean, you had like the Never-Ending Story was 1984, and Last Starfighter, I think, was that year. I mean, for fantasy and sci-fi.
Another favorite of mine was Electric Dreams, you know, back to the idea
of
Virginia
Madsen
that could gradually sort of take over. I wouldn't call it artificial intelligence as such, but it wasn't far off, I think, by modern standards. We've only just 4 decades on got computers and devices that can talk back to us, and I think they're benign. The other thing about this time really was that where was Doctor Who and sort of domestic TV thrills and spills? Where did all of that fit into it? Doctor Who seemed unmovable at the time, but of course we'd find out the following year that even Doctor Who's sort of place in the schedules was far from certain. 84 was kind of the last year we could all relax as Doctor Who fans. A bit like now, really, where we are now. Doctor Who is coming back this Christmas. We're assured for a big Christmas special written by Russell T Davies. We think it's probably going to star Billy Piper, but we don't know who else. We certainly have no idea really who anybody's playing. So between now and then, we're kind of making our own amusement, and I think with a sense of relief, definitely with a sense of relief. This has been a big week for Doctor Who with the return of more classic episodes, of course. The Dalek Master Plan missing episodes being returned has been on everyone's lips, including the Doctor himself. That's Peter Capaldi out on tour still with his album Small Venues Up and Down Britain, and I think he's definitely channeling William Hartnell there. He must have seen the pictures before he adopted that pose. So yes, we've had Doctor Who episodes found in an eclectic collection of other films, and we covered it extensively on the last edition of this show. So again, support Film is Fabulous if you can. Links in the description as ever. We'll definitely be returning to that topic. Of course we will. In the meantime, go and check out all their social medias. Follow the evolving story. Get more information about how they do what they do, why, and how you can help as well. There's our conversation with Tim Burrows from the Missing Episodes podcasts here on Type 40 Live just a few days ago. A very generous conversation there with Tim. He told us as much as he could about not just the episodes themselves, but how Film is Fabulous operates too. So again, our thanks to Tim and to Film is Fabulous for trusting us with that. But you can go and play that and replay it to your heart's content there over in the playlists. And there's the Type 40 podcast, of course, across all major podcatchers and our home feed, type40.podbean.com. But this is Type 40 Live on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook, blasting you back to the past and back again. We've still got one foot in 84 and another in 2026 as we celebrate yet another addition to the line of releases from BBC Studios of Doctor Who, The Collection. At long last. I think we get about 2 of these a year, don't we? They can never really roll around quick enough. Appetite has never dulled down. It goes really quiet, and then out of nowhere we get the trailers, we get all the drama, and we get the list of features. We're going to come to all of that later on and get acquainted or reacquainted with a great many of those stories. We'll pick up some of your comments too, of course we will. But before we get stuck into that and the geekiness really starts, I advise you maybe listen to him.
This is Lord President Rassilon. Due to the interference of that idiot renegade, the Doctor, the universe is collapsing. Unfortunately, the Time Lords have no answer for this, and I am forced to call upon the services of Type 40 Podcast.
Is that all clear? Is everybody ready? Hold tight, as they say, for a flick through more plastic trays holding classic Doctor Who stories, part of the collection. We're marking the stories themselves and the characters that brought them to life. So the people who acted in them, the people we see on screen, and the creatives who wrote them, directed them, and produced them. Yes, it's all going to be out there. We're going deep because this is my personal favourite season of not just classic Doctor Who, probably all Doctor Who, for absolutely unabashed, biased reasons. I've been looking forward to the release of this particular season since the range started 8 years ago now, so I can't promise I'm going to be able to give you the most objective take on any of this, but between us maybe we'll find a balance. We have this fabulous trailer to get us in the mood here, transport us back to 1984, and a bit of a sample of what was kicking off and what we're getting again in this brand new form. So check this out.
BBC One launches into a new season of adventures for Doctor Who, starting this Thursday as the TARDIS materializes in a military base on Earth.
Prepare to fire energy tracers.
No, don't.
You recognize it?
Yes, you mustn't attack. That's a Silurian battlecruiser. The race that ruled this planet long before your species evolved.
Fire again!
Battle is joined, and that's more of what they call quantel effects there, Luke, the way that square is sort of vanishing off
More
there. So
danger
that's what I
awaits the Doctor in a different time zone as the evil Malice awaits.
Oh, yes.
It's growing stronger. Now everybody stay perfectly calm and still.
Even the Doctor's calm is shattered when the TARDIS is forced down on the planet Frontius.
Really?
Oh, I love that.
Well, that is yet to be determined. As you can see, we're helpless.
Not if I have anything to do with it.
Swift exit, honey. We've had enough of this planet.
And later in his travels, the Doctor meets some old enemies. Doctor Who starts a new series of adventures this Thursday at 6:40 on BBC One.
This is the 19th release in these limited edition box sets of the classic series. 10 discs of season 21's adventures, Peter Davison's final season broadcast between the 5th of January 1984 and the 30th of March 1984. And the blurb says, picking up the Doctor, Tegan and Turlough after the Time Lord had rejected his election to the President's young Gallifrey to rattle around time and space. They have to be the two most grumpy of companions ever, haven't they? But they stood the course here for these stories. Warriors of the Deep, The Awakening, Frontios, Resurrection of the Daleks, Planet of Fire, The Caves of Androzani, and then it all wraps up with a first adventure with the 6th Doctor and his brand new companion there too. So it was all change, exciting and colourful times as well. In my view, this is a kind of a response to where sci-fi was going at the time and the broader culture. Eric Saywood's influence is all over this. Obviously, the impact of a story like Earthshock, I think, had been cast a long shadow that had, Gary. I think it had been popular with the fans, which meant a lot to the producer, John Nathan Turner, at the time. You know, he did play to the fans, but it had been popular with the general public as well, to do something so shocking as to kill off a companion in 1982. The series was kind of still riding off the back of that, probably when these were all being filmed, which was, I think, from about the summer of 1983 onwards. So the series, I think the things that the series could do and the stories that it could tell and how hard it could hit, I think that had changed, but that would also lead it to problems later on. But right here and right now, no matter where JNT and the script editor Eric Saywood, where their relationship would go at this moment in time, it seemed to be delivering for me a more sci-fi series than ever, one that was very formidable and very punchy, but had a lot of that kind of lived-in feel that those Ridley Scott movies had, that the cinema of the time had too. I mean, what do you quantify as the flavour of 84? What made it different from 83?
Well, You're exactly right in that this was the first season as a whole where, in a lot of instances, you can tell they're trying to kind of recreate the impact of Earthshock, which, quick tangent, by the way, can we have like a moment of silence over the end credits, because it was March 16th, which is just 2 days ago, back in 1982, 45 years ago, and 2 days, where we lost Adric in Earthshock.
Yay.
That was the big anniversary this week, just
God bless you, Andrew.
just a couple of days ago. But yeah, and the thing about it is, and I'll never forget, Dan, there was a great article in one of the best articles they ever did in DWB talking about, was the show learning the wrong lesson from Earthshock? And
Yes.
then later on Caves of Androzani, where you want, where it's about the constant big splash, big impact. But the reason that Earthshock, one of the many reasons why Earthshock had such a big, and I will be talking about 1984, had such a big impact, is because it was unique for a lot of different reasons. You can't do that every week and have it either feel the same or be unique. One of Doctor Who's greatest strengths is that in any given season, you have a range of stories with different tones, different emphases, and whatever. And luckily this season, we're not getting too much nostalgia. I mean, it starts off, we get the Silurians and Sea Devils, and then later on we get the Daleks and the Master coming back. But this was the second full season with Eric Sayward as script editor. He'd do a total of 4 seasons, 20 to 23. And I think this season, it seems to me, you can really start to see like the darkening of the universe that Eric Sayward wanted to operate in. Things are more gritty, things are more violent, and then it would kick up several notches in the following season 22. But I think Eric Sayward wanted, the Doctor to be kind of operating in this darker, more violent, more unpredictable universe. And season 21 seemed to be like the last time where there was kind of a balance. To me, it went too far in that direction in Colin Baker's time. But this season was still a little bit, had everything more in balance in that regard.
The only thing that got brighter were the clothes, really, with hindsight. Everything else got sort of, you're quite right, it got more and more sour. Eric Sayward had written Earthshock, and so he was coming in. I think he was sort of parachuted into the script editor's role, but by this point he was all over it, really. And I think the jewel in his sort of crown, really, what he'd been working up to doing, was to bring in the Daleks back, which he was able to finally do this year after it being postponed the year before. And it seemed like that was the one, that Earthshock was kind of the warm-up act in many respects for him for that. And he got to, because obviously getting to kill off a companion, David, is one thing, but in this there were so many comings and goings. Everybody was leaving, so he got to sort of decide how to companions were going to leave, Tegan and Turlough, played by Janet Fielding and Mark Strickson. A third, really, if you count Chameleon. So Chameleon, who I'd sort of forgotten about by this point, he comes back to be written out, so that they can go in as many dark places as they want with that. Introducing a replacement companion, of course, with probably the darkest introduction I think I can ever recall to a companion. There's all sorts of things in the corners of the introduction of the character of Perry, played by Nicola Bryant. And then there's the arrival of the Sixth Doctor as well, who's a lion of a character. By the time this season sort of plays out, we're left, just the viewers, the school kids, like you were saying earlier on. Not only have you lost your big brother figure, you're not entirely sure who this guy is, if you can even trust him, which was a big culture shock sort of at the time. I'm not sure how into any of that Eric Sayward really was, because he's not been backward in coming forward speaking about it speaking about it since. But to me, at the time, this seemed like a really formidable, a strong show that had a real sense of identity and was punching its weight, I suppose, against the flurry of American shows that were starting to fill up the schedules. I'm thinking of the A-Teams, the Night Riders, and the shows like that. You know, we've got people smoking on screen and sort of dank corridors and sort of swaggering army types, sort of cussing at one another and spitting. You know, so. Little aesthetic things like that, they all build up. And the 80s the mid-80s in particular, was quite a gritty time too, wasn't it?
It was. And that was the term I was going to use, grit. This last season was far more, and I'm with Gary on this, season 21 was more gritty. It allowed you had the morally ambiguous Turlough on board. Tegan had now sort of like warmed to being with the Doctor a little bit more. The Doctor found himself to be in more gritty, more testing, more morally ambiguous situations, which brought out, I think, the best side of Peter Davison's acting in the role. And I think he's said many, many times that if his first 2 seasons had been more like his last, he would have stayed an extra year, because he found that in this last season, he was now getting the material that he'd probably wanted, and the character was going in a way that allowed him to use his range better, because there was some pretty sinister stuff. Even if you look at The Awakening, which I've watched over the last which I've watched in the last couple of days. The Awakening, on the face of it, is quite jolly war games, hockey sticks. But actually, when you sort of look beneath a few layers of it, it's actually quite a dark story about how a malevolent influence can start affecting people, and of course, you know, Warriors from the Deep, Warriors of the Deep is also very dark. You know, it just keeps getting darker. There are obviously some nice, you know, there is a balance, as Gary suggests, with the quirkiness of the Doctor. But it is quite a dark season and gritty, and does reflect, as you quite rightly say, the competition from the States and the way that films are going at the time, such as, for example, Terminator. You know, it's that sort of, okay, so the future might not actually be as good as we've let it out to be.
Do you remember, David? Do you remember the music? Do you remember the music from James Cameron's Terminator? That kind of that industrial sounding music. Now, to me, you may well laugh. You may well laugh at my rendition of that music, and you may well laugh at this notion. But to me, the music in Resurrection of the Daleks, in particular, when you hear that crang, that goes like that, it's industrial sounding music that lines up completely. And then you've got a story like, as you say, like The Awakening, set in a little church in a tiny village, written by a man called Eric Pringle, who sounds like a character that Matt Lucas would play in Little Britain. And I still, to this day, I've never seen a single picture of Eric Pringle, so I'd like to think he looks like Matt Lucas, but with a... But there's contrast, but there isn't. We've got trips to the far-flung future, alien planets, all that kind of thing, Luke. The only thing there isn't really in the mix is time travel to the past, but we've kind of got ghosts and things in The Awakening as well. So, Luke, we've established that you weren't around then. Do you want to flash up the sign?
Were you around then? Were you around then, Luke?
Yes, there you go. So we know you
with
weren't
my
around.
War the World's pen, which is from the 80s.
What? One of the standout stories for you when you look at this assortment of serials from that time, and what do you notice about them, and have you got a favourite?
I'm torn between two, but I'm probably going to have to go with Resurrection, because I had, growing up as a kid, I remember buying the DVD of Resurrection in HMV, and when I was younger, it's like your parents go out, you go stay with the grandparents, and my 80-year-old nan, I used to make her watch Resurrection of the Daleks with me every weekend or every other weekend. Yeah. So she always used to, would jump between Resurrection of the Daleks, Caves of Androzani, and what was the other one? The Green Death. So,
good man.
I have a very special place in my heart for especially Resurrection of the Daleks, and I think it's a fantastic bit of Doctor Who that is so the Daleks are scary again.
They were,
they were terrifying. The police, the opening shot with the policeman is just fantastic when they're coming in, and you're lulled into a false sense of security, and then all of a sudden they're pulling out these guns and they're just mowing everyone down, and it's like, oh, as a kid, that's
holy
oh my god, that's awful, that's terrifying. Davros is obviously, as Terry Malloy is in, and Terry Malloy gives a very great turn as Davros.
My favourite Davros. That's a controversial thing to say, but Terry's my favourite. He's my guy.
He's mine as well. He's mine. I think for me, I watched Warriors of the Deep last night. Thought it was absolute pish. Even with the special effects and stuff, I was like, it
Really?
literally is like watch. Yeah, it's like watching After the Crystal Maze. I enjoyed it. How many times does the Doctor, by the way, have a cliffhanger where he's drowning? Because we got. I was like, not again. I was like, I forgot about this one. I was like, God.
Tom Baker and Deadly Assassin. That's where it starts.
Mary Whitehouse would be all over this again, wouldn't she? Jeez, come on.
But it was the most unconvincing backflip ever.
It was awful.
I actually really liked it because I got my set yesterday, and the first thing that I watched was Where's the Deep Special Edition. I had a great time watching it.
But didn't you feel, Luke, that the Merca looked scary? Because I did.
Yeah. And then obviously there's one shot where they haven't edited out the Mercas when the soldier gets killed by the Sea Devil. Spoiler if you haven't seen it, and he just falls on the old Merca, and I was like, there it is. There it is. This is the one I missed. But it was just
old sins. Luke cast long shadows.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I was like halfway through, I was like, I'm bored now.
I just thought, you know what? I think they only cut like about 10 minutes out of it, like, which is mostly just, soft trims, but it felt a lot pacier to me. It felt like it was constantly like moving, like there wasn't really any lag time to it. They took off, thankfully, the whole stupid lights, which originally like blinked every time they talked, which was not the way that it was. We've got some
screenshots from because that's probably the jewel in the crown of this 10-disc box set, isn't it? This special edition of Warriors of the Deep, which has been supervised by Pete McTighe, who did similar, didn't he, for the Happiness Patrol a little while ago, about a year or so ago. So there seems to be one story that they single out now for that kind of treatment, and it tends to be the most unloved. You could say that the Happiness Patrol is the one from season 25 that most people hated, and Warriors of the Deep has always got short shift from people. It's been Warriors are on the cheap has been the term for it for 40 years, which I always felt was really unfair. Growing up in isolation, I was the only Doctor Who fan that I knew. I didn't know anybody else, and for me, this was blockbuster stuff. I loved it. I've never had a problem with any of it. Like I say, I'm completely biased when it comes to this season. I love every single episode of it, unashamedly.
Well, I think though this was the story that was, I think, really the biggest victim of the season. I think of the industrial thing. Like, wasn't there something that delayed it where they had to? Their filming time was so truncated. Like, for example, like the director couldn't do, like in the control room, couldn't do, a variety of shots. He just had to like lock off the camera into wide shots. And I think one of the things that they did for the special version was they did either alternate scenes or refilmed some stuff to give more a variety of types of shots, like either zoom ins or close-ups, that the original like locked off wide shot didn't allow. And to me, I think it just adds to it.
Yeah, because I think, Peter, in the making of documentary, there was some sort of industrial issue, and which meant that if they delayed it, it wouldn't have got filmed.
Right.
And obviously JNT was mindful of the whole Sharda thing, which of course he was a production unit manager on. And so basically he said to the director, well, I know it's not ready, but you've got to do it now, or otherwise it doesn't get done. And they just went, oh, and I think it was Pennant Roberts, who was a very experienced director with Blake Seven and everything like that. And so, that's why the paint is wet on the Merca. And that is why that they were having to do scenes as live without camera rehearsal, which Peter Davison says was a complete thrill at the time. But you weren't able to, with the multiple takes, you're not able to get the right performance.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, or a combination of performances to pick the best take. So
yeah, I forgot Pennant Roberts did that. JNT was haunted, really, I think, throughout his entire tenure as the producer by the prospect of there being another Sharda. There were 3 or 4 stories, weren't there, that were kind of saved through one measure or another. I suppose the most famous being Greatest Show in the Galaxy, being able to film it on the car park. But he was determined that would never happen again. And I think that, again, John Nathan Turner's a complex character, made a lot of controversial decisions, but he kept the train on the tracks and kept delivering the maximum amount of content that he could in the average year. There were no split years, there were no gap years. And he was excessive in the way that he would manage to get himself nice little recce holidays and things like that. But for the most part, as a viewer, being served up this stuff on a regular basis, good material that was getting visibly better each year, I have to say I was pretty happy. I think the Awakening is a really strong story. In my view, it is as atmospheric as stuff like things like The Demons, other stories of a kind of similar bent. And even now, this is a story I go back to all of the time. Works well in its 2 halves and in an omnibus form as well. But at the time, they copped a bit of flack over this, but that was a sign I think they were going in the right direction. And as it got deeper, it kind of got... I'd say it got more grisly. No, it did actually get more grisly. At moments in this, they talk about Tegan being sacrificed on a maypole there, look, in the village on the squares. There's a touch of the Wicker Man about it. And then there's some really sort of visceral moments in the follow-up story, Frontios, where Turlo his PTSD is sort of revealed in some terrifying scenes and some brilliant acting from Mark Strickson. So, I think it's about as punchy as you could get at 10 to 7 on a weekday on a school night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can see where they're going with it. And we talked about Frontios a little while back after his death. And why didn't Tegan change her clothes, by the way? She's in the same outfit the entire time. It works for the Doctor, but Tegan, come on.
Yeah, it worked for me as well. I'm glad she didn't change out of that gear.
That to me was a problem with the entire Davison season, is they didn't allow... Like, she was dressed as an air hostess for all of season 19. In season 20, she had like the white top and the skirt.
Oh yeah.
And then in this season, it's all of this. And and Turlo wearing the outfit of a school that he hated being at, but for some reason he stayed in that uniform for 2 full seasons. I wish they would have just have allowed, because I know JNT liked the concept of costumes, not clothes, but I wish they would have done.
It was to keep costs down.
Yeah. But like when Sarah Jane was on, how many stories can we identify just because of what Sarah Jane is wearing in that particular story? So I kind of wish that there'd been more variety. But Luke's exactly right that she's wearing the same thing.
Can I just come back on the Awakening for a fraction, please, Dan, if I may?
If you like, talk about it all. Talk about it all holistically. I mean, we're talking generally about the whole sort of crop, really.
Thank you. What I noticed from the Awakening is it's a 2-part story, 45, maybe 50 minutes at most. But and I was thinking this after a few hours after I'd watched it. I was thinking, wow, there was so much story, so much character evaluation, so much character development, so many characters, so much development, so much pace, so much story being told in 50 minutes. And I just, forgive me for thinking this, I just thought, why can't that be done in recent Doctor Who with that sort of 45-minute sort of thing? Why hasn't where on the line have we have we as viewers stopped being told a story? And that doesn't have to be Doctor Who. That can be anything. Okay, because there was so much going on, and everybody had enough to do. Nobody was forgotten. All the characters you sort of cared about, and you were happy if they got their comeuppance, and they were well plotted, and it was well designed, and even though it's only two episodes, The Awakening, there is a hell of a lot going on in that story. It's packed full of great stuff.
This was also, remember, the proof of concept, really, for the adjustments they would make the following year. I mean, you could say that Doctor Who, I don't think it was being taken for granted around this time, but they were testing the ground for a serial drama that could be on for 2 weeknights at around the, 7, 7:30, that time. They were prepping EastEnders. They'd spent a year and a half on that before it launched, but they weren't sure where to put it, so they used Doctor Who to test the ground to see if people would follow it around the schedules. And then once they'd finished using Doctor Who for that, and it worked out in Doctor Who's favour, it did replenish the ratings, but once they'd finished testing it out with that, they then flipped the format again by testing it with Resurrection of the Daleks, by flipping it to 2 45, 50-minute episodes. Again, that also, you could say that was a natural, and quite a natural evolution for Doctor Who that maybe could have happened a few years before, but it happened because the BBC needed it to happen to strengthen other shows rather than because it was right for Doctor Who. So there was this this idea, Gary, that Doctor Who it was fine to experiment with it because nobody really cared about it, or nobody would notice if it altered in any way. They just followed it around wherever you put it. I've never been really sure why they chose Doctor Who to do all this stuff with.
The correct me if I'm wrong, making the 2 Daleks episodes 45 minutes, was that because the Olympics was on at the same time?
Yeah, that's right.
And they had to, that's the only way they could fit it into the schedule
at the time, because there was, so Channel 4 had just launched. There was 4 channels on British TV, and they were in competition, really. So Olympic coverage was usually dominated the BBC schedules across both channels, and they would just move everything else out of its way. And Doctor Who at that time, because of the time zones, I think it was did it take place in Sarajevo, somewhere like that, David, in '84?
Yugoslavia. Yes. You're
so it was
right,
to do with the time zones. And so, to be fair, it wasn't just Doctor Who. We were lucky that Doctor Who was on a tour, because there were some shows that vanished for 2 or 3 weeks. So you could say that we did okay out of it. But obviously, a lot of people were wondering, expecting it to go off after 25 minutes. It just carried on. I loved it. I thought it added to that blockbuster feel. It was on for longer.
Well, I will say that all of you in the UK had a better experience with Resurrection of the Daleks than we in America did, because originally, when this season was added to like the syndication package, I don't even think I saw this season in the syndicated package until like Sylvester McCoy was already the Doctor, because there was such a time delay for, the 80s episodes being added to the already existing like Tom Baker episodes and stuff. But when they added this season, the print that Time Life, which is the syndicator in US for like the Doctor Who packages, they got a version of Resurrection of the Daleks that was missing all of the sound effects.
Okay.
Oh, no.
And I think maybe even the music. So try to imagine the scene where the gun battle, as the rebels are hiding behind the boxes and the Daleks are coming in. Yeah. Try to imagine that with no gun blasts, with no music with nothing, and you just have people like going like that in silence as the Daleks silently just kind of move around.
The Dalek troopers, they've got those guns, and they go.
Yeah. No, yeah,
like that.
It was basically, and you could hear everything being moved around like on the studio floor as the Daleks glide past something, because there's no music, there's no sound effects, whatever. And finally, I think a year later, they finally got the right version with the sound effects. So that's what the US had to suffer with. One quick thing I want to say both about The Awakening and Frontios. The Awakening, which I think is a great story. And one of the reasons I think The Awakening works so well is I like the character of the professor, or the school teacher. She's a school teacher. Jane, the older woman.
Yeah, Polly James' character.
Polly James. And that to me, along with Kinda, with Neris Hughes playing Todd, shows me how well Davison's doctor got along with kind of like older pseudo companions. You know, like in Kinda, he had that great relationship with Todd there, and this time he has a great relationship. So the older actresses playing the kind of like almost a de facto companion role, Davison had worked very well with. So that's what I think of when I think of Awakening. For Frontios, which is my second favorite story of this season, my favorite moment of this has to be where he puts on the half glasses, because Christopher Bidmead, I think, is the only writer, which makes sense because he kind of created the initial remit for what Davison's doctor was going to be, the old man in a young man's body. I actually think Christopher Bidmead is the only writer who got that really right.
To write it in that rounded way. I agree completely.
You know, and in his story, you know, with the season 19 stories he wrote, and this, and just for something, the way that when Davison put on those half glasses, I was like, oh, it should have been like this all the time, because he was so, that just crystallized what the best aspects of Davis's characters, his playing, you know, for the very first time in his regenerations, an old man stuck in a younger man's body. I adore that moment, and, you know, losing the TARDIS and all of that. And I just think Frontios is just a great, great story.
When people call Davison's doctor the wet vet, Luke, I mean, I always felt that was unfair. Like I say, I am biased, but to anybody who's clinging on to that notion of this character, by this season, I felt that they simply weren't paying attention.
Yeah, it's like when in Resurrection of the Daleks, and he's confronting Davros, and he takes the gun, and you're like, oh, right, okay, that's
shit got real.
It's a kick in the balls moment. It's like, Jesus, and you think, yeah, it's a shame. If his season was like this, you could see how much he had a grasp of the character at this point, and you could see he was having real fun with the material as well. And sorry, go back to a point on Resurrection. I was watching it last night, and like generally, because you haven't seen it in a while, so the missus was on her phone, and I was like, "Watch this! This was a kids' TV show in the '80s, and it was a bit where the Daleks have just shot through, and the guy's face has just melted completely."
Yes,
and she was like, "What?" I was like, that's you don't get that now, do you? You're not even allowed a bit of blood on Doctor Who now, and but yeah, it's I think it was the right time for Peter to leave, but it's a shame we didn't have more of this type of stuff in his story. But to be fair, I love season 20, so who am I?
Okay,
he's extremely strong opposite. I feel he's extremely strong, Gary, opposite Anthony Ainley's master.
Yes,
who've been playing the part at this point for quite some time. And although Ainley always insisted he was never bored by the role, I felt that he was definitely kind of underused and treated as a kind of pantomime villain. Yes. But in Planet of Fire in this season, I think we get to see. I think he gets to do more because playing Chameleon and the Master, and because Alien is able to inhabit the role more wholly, it also means that Davison has to be a lot more sort of sure of his sort of heroism, I suppose, to stand next to him and to be equally as strong back and to deal with that character in the kind of unflinching way that Luke said that he was with Davros. That line is walked all the way through this. He deals, he I wouldn't say he's ruthless when it comes to dealing with the Master in Planet of Fire, but I think he's very no nonsense with him. And also when he's put in a place where he has to decide how Chameleon's story is going to end, despite the fact that I think he viewed he's got a duty of care to Chameleon too. You can see him weighing up the moral dilemmas, but none of this stuff is overwritten. I think for the problems that I'm in all fairness, I'm mature enough to know that all of these stories have problems in some way, but I think the strength of the characterization isn't one of them.
To me, Planet of Fire is far and away Anthony Ainley's best story, 90% of which is due to the fact of how he's dressed in this picture. This is the first time, seriously, I was able to take Anthony Ainley's Master seriously without the kind of pantomime fairy tale kind of collar that he always had from like Trocken or whatever. I was able to take the character seriously because this story removed all of that, and which always was kind of a distraction for me. This which ups his danger level, ups his menace level to me, because when I just looking at him, I can take him seriously. His outfits before this was always a distraction to me. Anthony Ainley was always terrific, but the costume was always a distraction for me. And with Chameleon, who I think was originally intended to have a quick cameo appearance in The Awakening, but that was cut for time. So this was the first story since his debut that we saw Chameleon, and it's the story that they write him out. I mean, the stories of Wire Legend, they couldn't get the robot to work right and everything. These days it would just be like CG, so it would be no problem. But and so Chameleon had to, and then of course, the last line, how could you do this to your own? Was he going to say brother? Who knows? We'll never know. But I mean, this would have been, I mean, I'm not sorry Anthony Ainley came back after this, but this would have been a great final story for the Master had it been his final story. And the thing about Planet of Fire for me is, I think that, I mean, Mark Strickson is fantastic in this story. I mean, this story almost is, I mean, consider the amount that this story had to do. It basically had to write in Perry. It had to write out Chameleon. At the time, it had to kind of write out the Master, seemingly. It had to not only give the full backstory and write out Turlo. It's like amazing that there was even time for an actual story in this, while all of that had to be done. But I thought the location filming in this was really good. I thought Nicola Bryant had a great, this is a good, really good. No. It was a good story for her. I mean, it was a really strong first story for her to show that, her strength and determination and all of that. Could I just for a second, could we go back to Resurrection just for a second? Yeah. And I'm doing this. I honestly, I swear to you, this is not to put Luke on the spot. It's an honest question about Resurrection. And I'm sure he will have an answer for this because he loves the story so much.
No,
No, I'm not setting you up for anything, Luke. I swear, this is just an honest kind of a back and forth. One of the problems I have with Resurrection is in the very scene you just called out where Davison is confronting Davros with the gun. And it's not that he's confronting him with the gun, but in that scene where, he's threatening to shoot Davros. And Davros is making his point about you're weak. This just shows how you're weak and all of that. And then it's cut short. And Davison's character gets tracked and has to go. To me, it feels, every time I've watched that scene, I feel, okay, Davison's doctor lost this argument because Sayward should have given the doctor a chance to answer back and defend, you know, because at one point Davros takes basically the moral high ground, is undercutting the Doctor, but the story doesn't give the Doctor a chance to respond back and go, no, here's why you're wrong. Here's what I do. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, so Davros gets all the airtime in that scene for his argument, but you know, we never hear Davison's Doctor response. And I always thought, okay, so basically Davros won that argument by default because the story didn't give Davison a chance to answer back. That scene has always bothered me.
See, I don't mind it so much that I don't think you give the Doctor the chance to reply. If you cut off and you go, you know, you're leaving it morally ambiguous of like, oh, Davros might be pushing him to do this, or he could do it, and you could see like Davison is very conflicted, and it's like it leaves the audience being like, is the Doctor going to shoot? Is he going to get? Is Davros got one over on him, and is he going to shoot him? And it's like, oh my god! I thought it was such a mind blowing moment that I got it the complete opposite way too. So. There we go.
I guess I'm just used to, you know, like when people criticize the Doctor always gets a chance to push back.
Yeah.
And I guess it threw me.
Absolutely. But I think that's
so confusing.
It was a very much shit just got real moment.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things because Resurrection is often not very well regarded by some in the Doctor Who community for its rather convoluted amounts of stuff that's going on within the plot, but I love it. I don't care. I love all the crazy stuff that's going on because it's just sort of like Time Lord duplicates. Whoa, that we're going to assassinate the High Council of Gallifrey. Whoa, where did that come from? But I don't care. I want more of this. I just want more and more action.
It is
Give me action.
Packed with action, packed with ideas and concepts which don't necessarily go anywhere, but they don't. Neither do they need to. I think they plant the idea that something is possible, and then you can sort of, the viewer could play with that in their mind a little and follow it through to a natural conclusion. And that is something I feel that the show hadn't necessarily done up until this season, and it wasn't something that was consistently done, but it was a marked change. And I think that kind of reality and the layering that you've all spoken about there, the more I look at it, I'm starting to see even more in this. I think a big part of it, Gary, you know, you mentioned the introduction of Nicola Bryant as Perry, and right away, this actress in this character, I don't think she gets enough credit for this, because you could say, and she was brought in to be one for the dads. There was the bikini shot. You know, she's a very attractive young woman. She's a very attractive woman now, but my God, was she a great actress? Not only did we now know, of course, that she got told to play it American and she wasn't American and all those other trappings. all of that noise aside, she's terrific in both Planet of Fire and the Caves of Androzani in particular. You could say she also holds the course right the way through to the Twin Dilemma as well, which is a challenging story in many respects. But she's great in all of her episodes, all 12 of them, consistently good. Even playing the kind of Fay Ray of the Caves of Androzani, you could say, the damsel in distress, whatever you want to call it. And I think the more I look back, and I think the character probably did degenerate a little after this season.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Eric Saward lost interest in her or whether it's just what happens, if you know what I mean. But you go back and you watch these. She's bloody brilliant in them. So is Peter Davis, and obviously when you've got a guest actor like Christopher Gable playing Sheriff Checking, that it helps. But she's just as good with Maurice Denham in the Twin Dilemma, with the gentleman who plays her stepdad in Planet of Dallas, not Dallas Adams, can't remember the guy's name, but she's just as good in that as well. And opposite Anthony Ainley too, who'd been playing the Master for a really, really long time. Yeah. So Nicola Bryant deserves lots of props, I think, for coming in so strong.
Yeah.
And following Janet Fielding, who'd been synonymous with the show for 2 or 3 years.
Well, I mean, everybody in the cast brought their A game to Caves of Androzani. I mean, there isn't a single member of the cast for this story that isn't just. You
could say it's hard to mess it up, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, but because I mean, she has to play. She has to. I mean, in this story, I mean, she's terrified of, Cher's Jack, but then also kind of like sympathetic, and she's dying all the while, and everything. And yeah, that's kind of a big ask for your, second story.
I thought it was a very Sarah Jane-esque type performance. With very similarities between Sarah Jane and Perry in this, with what you've just described, Gary. And that photo of her with Salatine, Robert Glenister, wow, he was simply brilliant as well, with his sort of the way he would find the most awful things humorous as well, that he just laughed to himself with his dark humor and go, well, you're fucked, David. You're fucked then, aren't you?
David, with what Luke's just described about his girlfriend seeing the melty faced man in Resurrection, a similar. So we've got, you wouldn't see anything like that in a children's show, or maybe even in Doctor Who now. Characters like Salatine as well. Now you've sort of ringed that. He's a really complex, quite a nasty little character. Yeah. And we don't get characters like... I don't watch kids' TV anymore. Now, of course I don't. I don't really watch much family-orientated television anymore. But I suspect that you wouldn't really see anyone like Salatine. And I can't remember the last time I saw a character like that on Doctor Who, where he or she wasn't chewing the scenery and wasn't getting on, really getting on your nerves in quite short order. So it's terrific. Everyone in that is terrific. You could say it's hard to cock up a Robert Holmes script when he's firing on all cylinders like that. But the thing, as a big season 21 guy, though, David, it's always frustrated me a little that people tend to only talk about those 4 episodes, when to me, the majority of the rest of it is pretty fantastic too. And I'm quite a big fan of the Twin Dilemma on the sly, to tell you the truth, despite the fact it's got very obvious problems and the contrast that it's a real handbrake turn. And so you do get a bit seasick with it, I think, Luke, and it's more giant slugs. We've only just had some giant slugs in front of us. There's more it's like they've run out of money and all that kind of thing. And it was very reckless of them to end a season like this. But on the other hand, do you want a show to take chances like this when it's this popular and seemingly this safe in the schedules? You probably do.
Yeah. So sorry, going back, I forgot Robert Glenister was in Caves of Androzani. I worked with him not so long ago. Really, really nice guy. Really, really nice guy. And I never brought it up. I completely forgot. Mad Small World is coming out this year on Channel 4. It's called Still Waters. Keep an eye out for it. There you go.
Great things about that.
I think he's just celebrated his birthday as well, Glenister. I can't remember quite how old he is.
He's such a nice guy as well. I literally could talk to him for hours. His interview took the longest one out of all the cast, because he was just having a conversation. He was just so nice to get on with. What a lovely, lovely man. But yeah, absolutely. Back to Doctor Who now. But yeah, absolutely take a swing. Like, absolutely take a swing. If obviously they're experimenting a lot with this era anyway. So why not be like, oh well, let's try the new Doctor out for once, and then also you get the tease straight away. You know what the Doctor is like to a degree for the forthcoming season, so it's probably less trepidation or anticipation, and you can kind of be like, right, okay, cool. We kind of get a flavor of this Doctor already, so it's kind of already embedding him into the fans. It's like the new series should just do a mid-season regeneration for a change. Why not mix things up? I think change is always a good thing, especially in Doctor Who. The show thrives on it, so why shouldn't it?
I didn't like it at the time. I felt, because we've not had this before, but obviously now I can't really imagine the season without it. And I think it was partly John Nathan Turner's enthusiasm for Colin Baker and wanting to reassure younger viewers. He felt it would reassure them that the series was still alive, Gary, but it was still a bit of a gamble. But it's characteristic of this entire time for the show. Every single story there's comings and goings. They're all heavy to one degree or another, and in some, you could say that the problem with the Twin Dilemma is that you've got these great contrasts of it being quite light and fluffy and cheap and tacky, and then you've got some really visceral moments that that challenge you as a long-term fan. Things the Doctor does, things the Doctor says, without going over too much old ground, that we've all debated till the cows come home for 40 years now. But the fact that he was willing to do that and let the cards fall where they will, I think that speaks to John Nathan Turner and Eric Saywood, to tell you the truth. That even though they didn't get on, something about this was working, something about it delivered.
Well, I know that I think if I remember at the time, they said that, you know, he wanted the audience to get like a full, complete picture of the new Doctor, not just like 30 seconds at the end of, you know, where he kind of sits up, but like their first full glimpse. It's kind of, and so that's fine. I get that. It's kind of unfortunate that this was the choice of story that they used to debut. I mean, imagine if the Fourth Doctor's debut story had been something like Attack of the Cybermen, which was a higher quality story, plus tonally it matches better with Caves of Androzani than this does. It would have felt more like a continuity. I mean, yes, the Doctor's changed, but I mean, but in terms of tones and style, it would have been more an even flow, rather than going from something as visceral as Caves of Androzani to, you know, some of the elements of Twin Dilemma.
Proper head focus.
Yeah, so that was kind of, you know, it's kind of like right after Earthshock, you know, we got Time Flight, and I'm not slagging off Time Flight, but I mean, I think, for example, after Earthshock would have been better for, like, say, like a 2-part kind of quiet, kind of coda type story, to kind of end the season after you've just lost a companion, not another big budget. Oh, let's have the Concorde in Prius. You know what I mean? It's like you have to look at the shape of the season as a whole, which is why I actually think, Twin Dilemma aside, this season works really well, because the overall shape of the season is really varied. Like you said, we don't go to the past, but kind of, sort of, in Awakening. And there's a nice range of stories, a nice range of settings. And overall, I think this is like a really balanced season. I just think that it was an unfortunate choice to, you know, of that story for Colin's debut.
Because Eric Saywood has said in multiple interviews, that JNT was paranoid about leaving the fans doctorless for a year. But Eric Saywood was saying that we aren't doctorless. We've got a new Doctor. And I think we've mentioned it before, and I'm doing a little bit of COD psychology here, but I think he's still the Shada thing. I probably had become a bit of paranoia by this time for JNT, and he was thinking, "Oh my God, we've got to give them something. We've got to give them a 4-part story." When actually, it was probably the worst thing to do, and just that if you could have, as you quite rightly said, Gary, if you'd have quite imagined. The end of Change My Dear and Not a Moment Too Soon, end credits, bang, open credits, Attack of the Cybermen, quick bit of, you're a bit grumpy, aren't you? Quick costume change. We've got no strangulation scene. We've got no plodding, and sadly, we lose the wonderful performance given by Maurice Denham, of which I feel it is for me. Is largely the only real good thing about the Twin Dilemma.
There's an argument said quite often, David, that John Nathan Turner, it had sort of flipped, and I think we're seeing that to some extent now. We see it with people like James Gunn on social media, where there's a fine line between transparency with your target audience and becoming almost a slave to them. Whereby you're trying to please them, and it gradually eclipses your judgment. And John Nathan Turner had made himself very available. There was no social media then, but he would go to pretty much any convention, wouldn't he? And because largely it was rooms full of people overseas, he found that very seductive, who were very pleased to see him, who would shower him with gifts, rounds of applause, And he was a vain man. There's no way of getting around that. And I think he did become consumed by that in time by this point. And obviously Ian Levine was working on the show at this point as an uncredited creative consultant. And Ian speaks very freely about that time as well. And you could say, well, having Ian on board as a kind of walking encyclopedia of the lore of the show, it undoubtedly helped in many respects. But again, you'd got a sounding board there. As long as you can keep people on side like that, and Ian is very good at being able to judge what fans will and will not remember. He is now, and you can imagine he was then. And so it was wise having someone like Ian on staff up to a point.
Mm-hmm.
But you can listen to those voices too much. You can be led by the not paranoia, but by potential pitfalls like the Shada thing. And he was on the show for a really long time. I think he initially did want to leave around this time, but it sort of rolled on. And it's all very well documented. But I think this is where, now, of course, with hindsight, you can see, I don't think it was a dead show walking at all, but maybe it was overconfident. JNT was overconfident. Whereas the truth of the matter is that some of these screws maybe needed tightening. I don't know, or that this was the pinnacle of what JNT could realistically do with the show, because I think that the show stopped evolving, probably with the Caves of Androzani. But let's be generous, it stopped evolving with the Twin Dilemma, and didn't start again until Andrew Cartmel stepped in for Delta and the Bannermen, and then we're off again. It starts to, there's a direction of travel again. For whatever reason, it's not. I don't think it was JNT. I don't think it's JNT's fault, but the show became it became like blown around by the change of the seasons and the change of personnel, and the explosive times, the pop culture of the time. Kind of saying that its time was up before its time. I don't think the series was. I don't think the series was right to be sort of sniped by Michael Grade in the way it was less than a year later. So much in this. I could rattle on about this forever.
Well, one really quick thing I wanted to mention, I've been kind of thinking about, is that in looking at this, the pictures you've gathered here, I kind of start to think, like, in any one given season, how much change can the show see until you kind of like exhaust the audience? Here's what I mean. In season 18, Tom Baker's last season, we have the introduction of Adric. 2 stories later, you lose Romana and K9. The story after that, here comes Nyssa. The story after that, there's Tegan, but then you lose Tom Baker. In like a space of 5 stories, that's an awful lot of change. And what do we have here? Yeah. In just 3 stories, 3 consecutive stories, you have Tegan leaving, Turlo leaving, Perry coming, and then the Doctor leaving in 3 consecutive stories. That's like boom, boom, boom. And I know that, it's the end of an era, you've got to write up, but I mean, that still feels to me like an awful lot of compressed change. You know what I mean? And not spaced out where the audience kind of, I don't know, but that just seems like, I mean, how much change all at once is good.
Unheard of. As always, it's not just the episodes themselves, those stories that make up this brand new Blu-ray box set. There are hours of special features, some of which were on the DVDs, of course, the documentaries and featurettes and commentaries and whatnot. But there's lots more. There's lots new. Some of you have probably watched it already and have opinions about a great deal of it. But for now, before we go there and look at all of that, with Peter Davison again reprising his role as the 5th Doctor, we've got to take a break to pick up or pull up on the hard shoulder, I should say. So there's someone in Trap 2, Pete. but it'll only be a couple of minutes. We're going to blast back across the channels now to pick up with the commercial television, what they were advertising around this time when season 21 was being broadcast between January and March of 1984. This is what you could find if you just skipped over to ITV and Channel 4. And here it all was. Check it out.
Wimpy have moved heaven and earth. To bring you their sensational chicken in a bun. Delicious, succulent chicken wrapped in a light golden batter. Another earth-shattering idea from Wimpy.
They really made a meal out of that one.
Make a meal of it at Wimpy.
So what do you call yourself?
Antonio Montana. The word on the street, Tony, is you're not a small-time punk anymore.
Where'd you learn to speak the English, Tony?
I watch the guys like Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney. They teach me to talk. I like those guys. I always know one day I'm coming here, United States.
Al Pacino is Scarface. Now in the West End and all over London from Friday.
From the beer halls of fame shine out two gallant names, twin champions of Whitbread best beer. And one had this theory on drinking our beer, he was Abdul Bulbul Amir. As a rule, said Abdul, gravitational pull makes you sup standing up at the bar. Then a voice did declare Whitbread's best in a chair, it was Ivan Skavinsky Skavar. Well, those gampy old goofs fought it out, nail and tooth, but neither of them was correct. Sitting down, standing up, Whitbread's not all that fast, 'cause the best needs no etiquette.
Every year, we ask hundreds of different people why they read The Guardian and get hundreds of different answers. Some say it's a lively paper with controversial views. Others claim it doesn't distort the facts. Some like reading it because it's extremely well written and it offers a highly intelligent alternative. One simply said,
"There's something about The Guardian which sets it apart from other papers."
1.5 million people read The Guardian for 1.5 million different reasons. Why? Make your own mind up tomorrow.
Holiday in Corfu from £169. Relax, you're with Enterprise. Isn't that better?
Everything all right, Norman?
Yeah?
Half an hour tonight, Tom.
Take hold, everybody. Plain Bob Minimus.
What's up?
Something wrong, Robert.
Nothing should disturb that Condor moment.
Welcome back to your Type 40 Live, covering the future, the present, and the past of all things Doctor Who. And we're well and truly in the past this time, deep diving into the season 21 Blu-ray box set and the whole, really, of 1984, never more so than in the ad break. There's some cracking adverts from back in the day. I particularly liked seeing Vicky Michelle from Hello Hello. They're serving up some beer in a beer tent to Paul Bradley, who is best known as Nigel from EastEnders now, after 2 stints on EastEnders, but at the time he was more familiar as Warlock, Neil's best mate in the Young Ones. So no Doctor Who people in there that I could make out, but two great British TV faces anyway. David, did you see that?
Absolutely, and I particularly like the pipe smoker who dismantled the church bells. Good on you, mate.
And I have to ask you guys: did any of you ever experience what seems like a feeling of extreme joy when you're eating a wimpy chicken burger? I mean, that they looked at that like the most joyous thing. Oh, not alive. Have you ever heard of? Okay, you've never had a wimpy burger, then, Luke. Okay,
they were great.
There's no wimpy in Britain anymore. They've all gone.
Oh,
it's the best.
I think that's because Luke wasn't alive to buy it.
In York. I think there might be one in York. I think there might be a wimpy in York. I think so.
The last place on earth. Who'd have thought it? York has the last. Simon Horton is a big visitor to York, so I'll ask him if he's.
No, there's not. I was wrong. There you go. I was wrong. No, there wasn't. That was a great conversation.
When I first went to university to Portsmouth, Portsmouth is made up of various different. Is an island, Portsea Island, but it's various different districts, and one of them South Sea, which gives you a clue. It's the south part of the island by the sea, the very original. That had a wimpy when I first went there, and it was waitress service. And that was the best thing about it. You could go into Wimpy and you could
like a little chef used to be.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Oh, wow. Was it like in the commercial, David, where she kneels down next to you and smiles as you have the sandwich?
She had a very Portsmouth-style accent, which is along with colloquial dialogue.
Kneels down and smiles like the girl in, if we're going back to 1984, like the girl in The Podium in the first Police Academy movie. Maybe it could be something like that. Yeah, we've been talking about the season 21 box set, which has just been released this week. We know some of you have got it already. We've got some comments to get to before we look at the rest of it. So thank you for your patience so far. Hope you've enjoyed our conversation. Let's go and see what they've got to say about all of this nonsense so far.
Hi guys, and welcome to Type 40.
You know what it's like. You get deep into a conversation with your mates about the old days, and before you know it, an hour and a half has gone by. Thank you, Stephen O'Neill, for joining us on this trip back to 1984. He remembers what it was like as if it was yesterday. Luke, as if it was yesterday. Do you feel like you missed out on a particularly good year?
No, well, tell you all right. Stephen O'Neill and me have got some beef going on because he, in one of the other comments following up, he was like, well, in 1984, Wales had a decent rugby team. I'll have you know that in the five nations in 1984, Wales come last.
Got the wooden
spoon.
spoon.
In 2026, Wales also come last. So I don't think there's been any progression since the 80s.
Got the wooden spoon.
I'd say Wales are consistently shit, apart from a good bit in the 2010s. But so there you go, Stephen. How's that?
British music is pretty much shit now. In fact, it's largely non-existent. But 1984 was a great year for British music. Not so much the movies. We were on our uppers by that point, sadly there. But it was a great year for Doctor Who. I completely agree with you there, Stephen. Jonathan Cox has joined us there in the live chat as well. Good to see you, mate. Rose Kirby checked in too. Hello, good morning, afternoon and evening to the chat. To all on the panel, happy the first day of spring for tomorrow. I'm glad that Rose has told me about this because I was wondering. It's because it's actually been a really nice day today, and yesterday wasn't too bad either. I was thinking, what's going on? Is it spring? Surely it's here finally. Looks like it is. And Cheryl is here too. I love these happy memories, but now she feels old. Well, you got to take the rough with the smooth, haven't you, Gary? I mean, this is nostalgia. This is the melancholy side to nostalgia. It can make one feel somewhat senior.
Well, it makes you, I mean, you immerse yourself in happy memories, you feel young again. Nothing wrong with that.
Hi there, guys, says Adrian James, not disclosing his age. You can take from that what you will. Whereas Funky confesses here, he's confessed that this was before his Who fandom, and he was all about the A-Team and Knight Rider at the time.
Have you heard, Luke? Have you heard of the A-Team and Knight Rider?
I got the A-Team on VHS in some way.
I know that you weren't alive yet.
Yeah, I love it. A-Team is the one with Liam Neeson, right, and Bradley Cooper.
Yes,
that one.
Oh no,
and Rampage.
Yes.
I love that DVD.
Exactly.
The one starring Christopher Lillicrap is the best one. In 1984, the UK colour television licence was just 46 quid, says Stephen O'Neill, and they're about to put it up to 300 quid or something like that.
Oh my
I can't remember what the BBC have stated now. I'm exaggerating for comic effect, but they have just put it up. I have problems with Eric, says Richard Brooks. I think he means Eric Saywood, the script editor. His era is marred for me. If he was so unhappy, why didn't he leave far sooner? Well, I would imagine it was because the old the folding stuff, mate. You got to earn a crust, haven't you? You got to earn a crust.
Sorry, can I interject? Sorry, I mentioned Liam Neeson. Then I just saw one of the comments was from Liam Neeson's chin.
regular there in the live chat.
Better watch it there. Better watch it.
Oh,
Eric does complain in every interview now, but I think it's the passage of time. If you feel screwed over, and obviously J&T's been dead for like 25 years, they never did sort of come to any kind of understanding. There was never any making up. Different people react differently a lifetime later to things like that. So I don't know. I've never spoken to Eric Saywood, but I know what you mean, but I don't know. Maybe. I think he's justified in feeling the way that he did, because in some respects, Eric Saywood was left holding the baby for creative decisions which were quite wild. And as I said, a little reckless, and it probably had more of an effect on his career than it did on J&T's. I don't know. Big fans of Terry Malloy. I thought it was just us, guys. I'm so relieved when you said, David, and you, Luke, that you're Terry Malloy fans too. Because I thought they'd be paying for my blood in the live chat, because Michael Wisher obviously tends to be the favourite, but we've got some supporters here.
Malloy for me. Sorry, Luke. Malloy for me just added that extra dimension to Davros. Yes, it was a brilliant start by Michael Wisher, but Malloy added that sort of more malevolent, creepy, sort of double tooth-faced sort of element to Davros to give it that little bit more, put more flesh on the bone, if you know what I mean.
He also seemed like a psycho, an absolute foaming at the mouth psycho. Again, in line with blockbuster cinema. I think we'd moved away from that quiet malevolence of the 70s. Films like Marathon Man and Logan's Run, the villains were always very considered, weren't they? By the 80s, they were fucking loonies. And so I think Terry Malloy's Davros sort of does fit in a lot with that. Davison needed a liver bird as a companion, says Funky, because it was Polly James and Eris Hughes, both more famous for playing in the Carla Lane sitcom in the 70s. I was fancied the both of them. MILFs, early doors MILFs. I think that was Eris Hughes. I think she was gorgeous in the 70s and the 80s. Come to think of it,
I think that was actually a liver bird. So like Colin has Frobisher, they should have created a liver bird for Peter Davison. Not a lively bird. A liver bird.
Luke, the liver birds makes them sound like a pair of alcoholics.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would make
I totally agree. I totally agree with Philip. Delgado vibes.
So Phil Roy says, I loved Ainley in the dark suit, gave me Delgado vibes. Yeah, he did. Yes, very suave, wasn't he? And kind of as if he was taking care of business and you were in the way, or you buggers were in the way. And Nicola Bryant nailed it and fooled. I bet she did. And fooled J&T. Shocker, says the Zero Room. Was that? Did she? Yes, she did. She put the accent on, didn't she? Because she really wanted the part. I think she was about 22 at the time, so very young. But I think she was from Surrey. But she was married at the time as well. And he said, "Don't tell the papers that you're married. We want to make you feel attainable and all those." I think he worded it probably differently, knowing John Nathan Turner, but attainable. Even though Charlotte's not here, I'm trying to behave myself, you see. So I'll use the word attainable. Nearly everyone dies, says Bill Silver. I bet the Black Dalek had a handy escape pod.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's a couple of escape
he had
pods.
his clones spread around as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
definitely survives. So I
Yeah,
love
he
that.
did,
I
he did,
absolutely
didn't
love
he?
Resurrection of the Day. I think Resurrection is up there for me as one of my favorite Dalek stories. I absolutely adore it.
I know. I meant to ask this. I think we sort of went down that road, but we kind of ended up sort of rambling all over the place. Resurrection is my favourite story of that season, and it's a tough call because I love them all. I even love Warriors, but if forced to pick, I know the correct answer is always Caves, but for me, it's Resurrection of the Daleks. It's the blockbuster quality. That as much as I love Caves, it's a very quiet, deep, and dank story. Very gothic. I like Doctor Who to be.
Wow.
I like it when it's trying to be blockbuster because the age that I was when it was on, it was 10 years old. What can I say?
Yeah.
It was for me. All of it felt like it was for me. Lots of Robert Glenister fans in the live chat here as well. Big fans of Hustle. I've never seen that show, Hustle. It was on for years.
Great.
Looks
It's
really
great.
good. It's good, David.
Yeah, it's great. Absolutely brilliant. Because you got your man from my goodness me, what's
Robert
his name?
Vaughn.
Thank you. And you've got lots of other great actors and actresses in it as well. And it is just brilliant. A brilliant series.
I can't remember that the name of that dark-haired sort in it who went on to be in Dexter. She was gorgeous.
Jamie Murray.
Jamie Murray.
Oh,
she's great.
Well, there we go. So the new show with Robert Glenister and the guy that played Ricky September and is the new lead in Clayface is coming out on Channel 4 in the UK or AMC in America. That I worked on.
I shall look forward to that. I shall look forward to that, mate. Good.
Jamie Murray played H.G. Wells in Warehouse 13. Boy, she was great.
She played H.G. Wells.
Yes.
Does that work?
Well, you'll have to watch Warehouse 13.
When I last checked, H.G. Wells had a chap.
Let me just bring up John Carley and ask him.
She was great. She was great in that. She really was.
I never watched that. It did look like a fun show.
It
to
was.
Be fair, but yeah, I was
she
a big
was
fan of
so
hers.
Gorgeous in that show.
Yeah, she's a very, very attractive woman. If the idea was to introduce the new Doctor at the end of the story, end of the season, it was a misfire, says Phil Roy, to have the Doctor so out of character post-regeneration for
really
most
quick.
of it.
I promise this is going to be really quick, but I have to piggyback on what Philip Roy said. This is just my personal opinion. I actually think that whole strangulation scene was probably the most miscalculated scene, in my opinion, in the history of the show, and here's why.
Probably.
You don't have something like that happen inside the TARDIS, which for every child watching and for anybody watching is the safe haven of the show. You get into the TARDIS, you're okay. Whether it's escaping back to the TARDIS or whatever. You don't have the TARDIS, which is the symbol of haven and safety for every kid watching, have the place be where the Doctor tries to strangle the companion. I might have been a little bit okay with it if it would have been outside the TARDIS, weirdly enough. But the fact that that happened inside the TARDIS was just, to me, like not on.
I suppose as well, Gary, we'd gone from a situation where we were now at a place where the Doctor was seemingly like completely psycho, willing to kill his companion, but we'd only just got rid of a companion who tried to kill the Doctor internally. Yeah. So looking back, it could have been unwise. The whole thing could have been unwise.
Yeah.
A year without the Doctor, that sounds familiar. It says Farsight. Yeah, we're used to it. We're used to it now.
Okay, can I ask Gary a question? If you had to get rid of one bit from Doctor Who history, if you had the power, would it be that opening, that strangulation scene, or the bi-generation and everything that'll come afterwards?
Well, I don't consider anything that happened after 2017 Doctor Who. So
easy. The strangulation.
Yeah,
easy.
100%.
Absolutely, 100%.
I think it's so out of character. It's like just a terrible way to introduce Colin's Doctor. Absolutely awful.
Do you get the impression, Luke, as someone who, as you've mentioned, wasn't around then, we said this, do you think that moment also cast a long shadow, that it harmed the show, with hindsight, because you've got a window on this stuff that none of us have, so do you think that it was that significant?
I think it was, yeah. I think if you're trying to endear this new Doctor to to an audience of kids and everyone, and you just come off with quite a dark season as well. And the Doctor's supposed to be your hero, your superhero. He doesn't, he's not violent. He's not this. He uses his brain, and then all of a sudden, you see him harming a woman, abusing his companion, and you're like, what is this show turning into? And you can just see the death knells slowly starting to ring at that point.
The whole idea of regeneration trauma lasting for a whole story, I just think it worked once.
Yeah.
It worked once and only once in Castrovalva. And that's because the whole nature of the story was that cause and effect had been upended, and it was a particularly traumatic regeneration, and things were being done by the master to, prolong the regeneration trauma and everything. And he didn't have the zero room. That's the story that it worked. But to have it here and later on in Time in the Ronnie, where this whole manufactured regeneration trauma lasts for 4 episodes, let it be over in 10 minutes and then get on with things.
I would just like to add, if I may, story-wise, writing-wise, canonically-wise, it makes absolute nonsensical sense, no sense whatsoever, to have, even though he's in regeneration trauma, for the Doctor to try and strangle his companion when he spent nigh on 3 episodes risking life, limb, crashing space vehicles and everything to get some bloody bat's milk to save a life of a woman he barely knew.
Yep.
So that was the heroic nature of the Doctor, and to throw it all away the week after by having him, the new Doctor, try and strangle his companion was the biggest load of absolute codswallop I have ever seen.
Yeah, it should never lay a hand on a woman like that. That's I know it's for the effect of it, but no, it's just wrong.
Absolutely,
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Matthew Pound says the live birds didn't occur until the 90s. Well, they came back in the 90s, didn't they? They made a fresh series of it. Didn't go down very well, sadly. A great story, says Lord Thoth. I'm not sure which story he means. Probably all of them. I think they're all great stories for the most part. But the best is Caves.
Yep.
Floydian is in here with this comment. Hi, Floydian. Season 21 was my first full season, and when I became a fan, loved it. Age 6, and similarly to Dan. Oh, that's me. It's my favourite season for that reason. For that reason alone, I think that's a good enough reason, Floydian, to be quite honest. Thank you for the comment. Caves is a classic, but the Doctor is too passive throughout, says Matthew Pounder. Oh, I don't feel that way at all.
No.
I think he's put in several impossible situations and makes some very hard choices, and ultimately, pays the ultimate price, doesn't he? Placed in that situation. So I respectfully disagree with you, my friend.
He goes down to the cave to get the bat's milk. Come on.
I'm not gonna let you stop me now. 3, bang.
Yeah, that's one of the best
cliffhanger in the history of the classic show.
Yes.
Yep.
I have no qualms about saying that at all. Bill Silver also remembers Warehouse 13. Gary, a simple but brilliant concept. I'll have to catch this show. I was meant to watch it at the time. Never did.
Great mythology that they develop over the course of the series.
And going back to the strangulation of Perry, Matthew Pounder says, I wouldn't have minded if it was Adric. Poor old Adric, poor old Matthew Waterhouse, still the butt of jokes.
There's nothing to strangle Matthew. He's in a million bits.
Oh, Matthew, if you are watching, mate, because I spoke to Matthew about this topic, and he's a lot more good-humoured about it, I think, than the myth would tell you. But please don't take it personally, Matthew. We love you, really. We love.
But I actually do. Can I say though that I actually think we haven't actually talked about the regeneration. I think obviously Davis's regeneration is maybe for me my favorite regeneration of the whole entire classic series. When he goes, "Is this death?" I mean that's great.
Yeah.
And then all the companions seeing all the companions and and as David said, all this for somebody he just barely knew. But then I think it's very touching that his last word is Adric, because the last thing he remembers before he regenerates is Adric. I like that. I think that's nice.
The obviously the subject of regeneration. and the process, the way that it's visualized each and every time they do it, that is something that we talk about quite regularly, and I think worthy of a whole show at some point later in the year.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. Yeah,
we've got this.
Oh yes, please.
Power Ranger Donny. We've talked about doing this for a little while. I think now is the sort of time, the right window to do it. Hello, Dan, Luke, Gary, and David. Hope all is well. On the list, the final day of winter. So everybody's really clued up. Everybody's in tune with the seasons, Luke. I feel like I'm out of balance with Mother Nature compared to our followers there on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X. We've got more comments about Shooty Gato. We won't go there. Joanne Kelly,
I'm so sorry.
Joanne Kelly was gorgeous, a gorgeous Canadian actress. Who's Joanne Kelly? Who's Joanne Kelly?
Are they? Is he confusing it with Jamie Murray? I don't know, because we were talking about Jamie Murray.
Could be, because she's British, isn't she? Her dad used to play, he was in The Bill, and he was in EastEnders. He played Johnny Allen in the... He always plays the same dude, really.
Yeah.
He's a proper gangster lad as well. He's a proper... He knew quite some really dark people. Did Jamie Murray's dad.
He's still around, isn't he? As far as I know, he's still kicking around. Somewhat of a monster of British television, a very sort of formidable Cockney actor. This box set, of course, this brand new Blu-ray box set, the 19th in this range. Where does the time go? Collecting together all those fabulous stories that make up season 21 in this very attractive, they're all attractive, aren't they? Very attractive box set with all the customary artwork, as always, by Lee Binding. Every time one of these gets released, we say the same things. I try not to repeat ourselves, how lavish it is, how lucky we are as Doctor Who fans that the things just look so beautiful. There's so much TLC put into them. I know that other fandoms really envy this. But as always, there's always rough that comes with the smooth when it comes to any Doctor Who item, and lots of discussion over the last few days as well. Some customers are happier than others. We're going to see what's written in the stars. Of course we are. So we want your genuine opinions are more than welcome, as they always are. But I think the biggest feature, of course, the one that everybody's talking about in all sincerity, is the one that was premiered at the BFI. So it's this special edition of Warriors of the Deep. We talked about it earlier on. This got the full sort of Hollywood treatment, didn't it? The big screening there at the BFI. So there's not many spare seats, but then again, there never is. Tickets go like wildfire. There was the chance to see the new Merca in all its glory, as well as all the other nips and tucks performed on this story by Pete McTighe. There was a Q&A afterwards, but Pete McTighe wasn't there. But Dick Fiddy was. So that was Sarah Sutton for some weird reason. But there she is, all smiles. Peter Davison, Janet Fielding too. Nice to see. We talked about this earlier on, but you guys seem to have quite a good time with this special edition from what you said.
Yep. I loved it. I thought it's exactly what these should do. You improve... Whether you like the original or not, you find some way to improve it, tweak it. In this case, for me, it made it pacier. It just a constant sense of movement, which I didn't feel was there. I don't know that they needed to keep it 4 episodes. I think they should have just maybe made it all one movie. Would have been just as good. The Merca, I can't say enough great things about the Merca. When the Merca comes through that door, this is not it's a spoiler, but I don't care. When the Merca comes through the door and electrocutes that guy with his tongue, instantly, I was going, holy crap.
I was going, Jesus Christ, this shit's real.
Yes,
okay.
that was just great. And Ingrid Pitt's death is still pretty funny.
Yes.
But it's funny in a different way now.
What? I'm amazed they've kept it. Kept it in. I thought they'd just sort of, she caught the bus home or something like that.
Well, they of course they kept it. They cut the silliest part, which was the cake, but they kept her going before she. Yeah, but that's still, yeah.
But I love how they
funny
made
moments in this, of course.
There are, and I love how they made the Merca threatening. I love how there was a real sort of tension and sort of paciness about it and some really just urgency that the editor put into the story, and it was just sort of like, wow, the Murky uses the tongue now. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, this is sort of like, this is something to be messed with, not like Dobbin from Rent a Ghost. So I agree.
Now, Dan, have you watched the special edition yet of the story?
No, God, no, I haven't had time. No, I might watch it this weekend.
You have,
I
Luke,
might,
right?
I might.
I've watched it, yeah.
But I'll come to one reason why when we move on to our following points, because there is a reason why. I don't know yet whether I'll be watching it this weekend, so we'll come to that in a moment. There was one element that has annoyed people, believe it or not. Apparently, we get one look away there at a screen at some point in the story, and Pete McTighe has inserted a visual nod to the war between the land and the sea in the form of this caption. Which now, again, I haven't seen it. I don't know how long this is on screen for, and I don't know why people. Oh, it is a literal blink and you miss it moment.
It literally is about a second and a half. It's not enough time to get your anger flowing, but the kind of silly part is it's during the scene in the control room where. Not Savix, the name of the Silurian triad person. David, maybe you can remember. I can't right now.
I can't.
Is saying, like twice before we've come to you in peace, and look what happened. And then they show like little clips of the Silurians and the Sea Devils from the Pertwee era. Very specifically, he says twice before. They don't change the dialogue. Twice before we have encountered you and come in peace. So for them to inject this, which makes the third time, but you leave the original dialogue in, which says twice before this had happened, just makes the inclusion of this just silly because it doesn't make sense with the dialogue.
It's a reinterpretation of the dialogue as meaning the Silurians rather than the collective Aqua kind.
So what about the Hungry Earth then? Like, why is that not mentioned? They were peace negotiations there.
Again,
very good point.
Yes.
For me, the line should have been before we have come to you.
Yeah.
So they should have just knocked out the word twice.
Cut the word out. Yeah, people would have lost their shit about that, but they should have probably cut the word out. Pete, what a knob.
Come to us next time, Pete. Before you lock the print, make sure you come to us to
because the
double-check.
truth of the matter is, I know a couple of people are apoplectic about this, about the insertion of this war between caption for a split second. For me, he did all this in all sincerity. A special edition of a story like this, re-edited with new special effects. And moments. This is exactly what he did with the Happiness Patrol. In this respect, Pete McTighe was employed in a creative capacity to create an alternative version. And therefore, moments like this, depending on whether you enjoyed the war between or not, depending on whether you think that the gentleman in question isn't good at what he does or not, you could have opinions about that. That's kind of by the by. This is what he was tasked to do, commissioned to do, and the truth of the matter is, I think this is absolutely harmless. I do. It just doesn't bother me remotely. And if you haven't seen the war between, which obviously, if you're outside of Britain and you haven't got a VPN, then you won't have done. But I don't think it would have harmed the story, the telling of the tale in any way whatsoever. And so I'm fine with stuff like this, and I don't really get why people aren't. Altering the dialogue, altering the inference of the dialogue, you could say, well, that Johnny Byrne meant this, that, and the other. But this is kind of pulpy, hokum. They could have just
this actually, what? I don't know about David and Luke. This happened so fast. I actually had to pause. I had to pause and rewind it to see if what I saw, what I thought I saw.
I think I got told about it beforehand, and I was like, so I was actively looking for it in this bit.
Okay.
If I weren't looking for it, I'd be like, But
I had to advance it frame by frame because I completely missed it first time round.
Yeah.
So it is literally a blink and a whoa, what was that sort of thing?
Yeah.
A flinch moment, and so I only achieved by getting it by as I said, by advancing frame by frame.
Yeah.
So it might have been he might have just chucked it in there as a little silly Easter egg.
It's unobtrusive. It's the very definition of unobtrusive.
So not many people who were watching will have picked up on it. So I mean, this lot definitely wouldn't, because they watch edited versions of the stories, don't they? On Behind the Sofa, there are new Behind the Sofas on this box set, along with 2 editions of In Conversation. Matthew Sweet chats to Janet Fielding, Mark Strickson, 3, sorry, and Matthew Wardhouse. You get 3 long form interviews there with this. There's brand new making of documentaries for both Resurrection of the Daleks and The Twin Dilemma. And there's one of those fun features too, where Davison, Janet Fielding, and Sarah Sutton go off down the river on a boating adventure for reasons, I would assume. And there's more in the form of 48 Hours with Janet Fielding, where a friend of the show, Toby Haytoke, spends the weekend with Janet Fielding. I don't know who I feel sorry for more, Toby. Terrible.
He was paid danger money.
all sorts of things like that. So little treats, as well as the Five-ish Doctors reboot, which we talked about on the last event show, didn't we? So that's on here as well in HD with a brand new commentary for you to enjoy all over again. Because obviously the earlier releases of that can be quite expensive to get in your collection. So there's all of that and all the usual sort of photo galleries, PDF archives, and archive treats. Another argument that's sort of come around, another talking point, is the employment of artificial intelligence on this release. Now, season 13 came out October time, wasn't it? And this really blew up in the autumn. People weren't expecting AI to have been used in the restoration of those classic episodes. We wondered why. 18 releases into the range. And I think a lot of us were alarmed initially by some of the imagery that was being shared on social media, of screen grabs and such. And the reasons behind it offered, again on social media, from those involved were, at times, incredibly rude. That being said, there's been a few months. Time has passed in between then and now, and whilst I think that one has to accept that mistakes were made then, this is evolving technology all the time. Let's see where we are a few months in, one release on. The truth of the matter seems to be, again, I'm trying to be generous about this because I don't know how I feel about artificial intelligence. I'm still pondering the general question, and I do see plenty of examples where it's used sensitively and even creatively that does enhance all manner of material and even storytelling. But when we're talking about classic Doctor Who and stories that plenty of us grew up with or just love just as they are, I think it's harder to justify. And here, when it's come round to this release, my God, has this exploded just in the last 48 hours as more people have watched the box sets, have opened them and taken a proper look. Now, whether they're looking more keenly than they would have done because they've been told to look, the problems have been pointed out to them, I don't know, or whether people are finding them naturally. I'm unsure about that at the moment. All I know is that I don't like what I see. And I think that, David, how I felt about the previous release was that you can take a screen cap from somewhere, a freeze frame of something, and say, oh, look, you can see that, you can see this, that, and the other. Whereas when you see it moving on a modern, higher-end television, it probably looks fine. Whatever I feel about the principle, it probably would look okay. And then I saw some of the screen grabs over the last day or two on this. I mean, for example, the first thing I saw was this. So Colin Baker seemingly lost a pupil in the one eye completely. He looks sort of boss-eyed, like a doll that's come out of the factory and ended up in the sort of the rejects box And I thought, oh, that looks really bad. But of course, you put it into perspective, and it's actually, it still looks quite bad.
I think someone's kind of disproved that because that's actually on the DVD.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's actually someone was kicking off about it, and then everyone was like, "This is actually on the DVD."
Because Luke, this is more of the same. This is a moving image. If you freeze something, it could be attributed to something that would occur in video. So when I saw this, I wasn't desperately worried, shall we say? But the more I've seen, the more it's concerned me. Like this scene here in the warehouse. So this is a scene from the DVD. A warehouse scene of Resurrection of the Daleks with the troopers, the army there. And of course, we've all seen these uniforms in multiple TV shows, not least of all Doctor Who. The unit guys used to wear jumpers, sweaters very similar to that. So that's how it looked on the DVD. But when we look at a screen cap from the Blu-ray, if you look at the guy's sleeve, it's been completely smoothed out.
Yeah.
And even the Doctor's jacket there's a noticeable difference when we look closer, and you think, well, you have to look closer, but do you? I think that's quite noticeable.
Yeah, the texture. Yeah,
fully, and this is where it's starting to. This is where it's starting to sort of waver over that line we were talking about, David. I'm not happy with this at all. What are your thoughts now? A couple of days on,
I have no issue. Absolutely no issue at all. I'm fortunate enough to have a Sky Glass 4K UHD TV because I can't get Sky by satellite, okay, because of the position of houses around me. So the only way I can get the only way I can get the only thing and Virgin wasn't in the area at the time, so I could only get Sky Glass. My Blu-ray player is a good Blu-ray player, and I've had no issue with this at all. Absolutely no issue. And I'll come back to a point that I made on our admin group earlier. Remember the basic animation that you have of somebody doing a series of drawings on pieces of paper, and then you flick the pieces of paper, and it looks like something is moving. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you randomly stop that flicking of the paper and pause on an image and look at that image, you might see something absolutely bizarre and think, gosh, that doesn't look right. But it's not designed to be viewed that way. It's designed to be viewed as a series of moving images. Now, what can happen is that you then change the perspective of what you're seeing and go, oh my goodness me, this is absolutely outrageous. But when actually viewed as a whole moving segment of things, it's not noticeable. And it becomes, it's almost like it's an optical illusion. Now, how do we know what the texture was like back in the day? How do we know that that thing with the texture of the jumper wasn't caused by the cameras that they had at the time? How do we know that you know that's going on? So what we're having is with the greatest respect to people, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, because like some people when say,
thing is, David, I don't think that it could. I don't think you could add an artifact which is, for example, on the sweater, parallel lines running down an article of clothing. I think that's. I know what you mean. I think this has to be. Maybe it's not, or maybe it's not a universal rule of thumb, just as you say. But just in this, because I've only seen the screenshots. Yeah. In this example, I think there's clearly a problem. I don't disagree with the principle of what you're saying, but to me, looking at this is stark. This is pretty stark evidence to the contrary in this example.
It could be an issue with the software. It could be an issue that it's identified something incorrectly. But am I really going to get seriously upset about the texture of someone's jumper? No, I'm not going to get seriously upset. If AI changes the whole nature of the storyline and gives us a random floating Dalek at this point, I'm going to get a little bit pissed, okay, because that takes the story out of its context. But as I was saying, with the greatest respect of individuals of whom might be going, oh, this is outrageous, this is outrageous. We don't know how this AI process was applied, okay? There's somebody on our panel who does have a little inkling about AI and how it works. Sorry,
I would offer David that on the evidence of what we're seeing. No, I'll be honest, I don't know how it works, but on the evidence of what we're seeing, neither do these chumps who are working on these box sets. I think they're wielding tools that they have very little aptitude with, and that's what worries me. And more to the point, they're charging me 60 quid to own the end results. That's my problem.
It has. I understand, but it hasn't altered my enjoyment of this. It hasn't changed it. I think the reconstructions are brilliant. I love them. I give it 5 out of 5. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I get to see it in the clearest possible way that I have ever seen it. And, you know, I remember, through Doctor Who fan sites and Doctor Who fan clubs, that I persuaded my parents to pay for a bootleg version of stories on VHS with tracking issues, with woe and flutter, with slurred speech, and with more snow on the screen than we had in a bloody blizzard. Okay, then so we have to understand that what our memory shows us of something is a very rose-tinted, this was perfect, this was that. And technology changes, and I appreciate what they're trying to do with it, but I do believe that this is the clearest, best version of a story that I have ever seen, and I am fine if you want to disagree with me. Absolutely brilliant. If you want to disagree with me, that's your. I agree
with the principle. I agree with the principle of the majority of what you've just said. But the problem is, and you're quite right, but in this instance, it's not my memory that's cheating. I've got these on my shelf.
Yeah,
I've got these DVDs that I can look back to, and to me, this picture, the DVD, is just better. It's more authentic. This is the TV show that I watched when I was a kid, not this.
And this is where I think the memory cheats. I really, really do, because it is, for me, a lot of the times, and I'm sort of like with the rabbi on streaming with this. I have to say that I want to see the best possible quality of a story from that, to go, oh my gosh, you know, this is brilliant, because that's
even
what I'm
if
used
it's
to
artificial,
seeing.
even if it's artificial,
absolutely, because that is what I am used to seeing now on the telly with all the latest dramas. So sometimes it's a bit of
I think that's why, and strangely, David, I think that's why, because this is an edict from BBC Studios, not just on Doctor Who, across numerous releases and material that's been prepped for streaming. So that's their editorial position, that evidently some people clearly do feel as you do.
Yeah, totally.
And this is who they're programming for. I'm not one of them, but evidently, it's not a blanket thing. There are people who do feel differently. For me, this is close to a deal breaker. And I've been very shocked. This image in particular, I was very shocked by this. It did get me drastically rethinking. Further, again, I won't look at too many examples of this, but this is the one that's probably picked up by everybody. This scene from Frontiers, which is obviously shot in the studio on videotape, and there they all are. Everything seems okay. It's quite brightly lit, but when you look, you've got Leslie Dunlop. There seems to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. And there's all the different fingers have been added that weren't there before.
You don't notice it when it's moving. You do not notice it when it's moving.
Well,
and having worked extensively when in situations whereby you to review things evidentially, you need to see the full aspect of something.
Admittedly, there's
in
still
real
5 digits.
time
There's still 5
played.
digits on. There's still 5 digits on that hand, but it just doesn't look.
Yeah.
It looks like something. It looks like one of the has been cut off. One knuckle, and the other one has been sort of created. And then there's the absence of Mr. Range's glasses. His half glasses have completely disappeared. Apparently, they disappear and reappear during the course of this scene. And I know I would notice that because I know these stories so well. And of course,
when it's moving image, you don't notice it. But I can tell you from looking at having reviewed lots and lots of videos over the time for an evidential purpose, okay, there are moments where you can pause a video with crystal clear technology and you absolutely are certain that something has disappeared or is in a way that it should not be, okay, because that is it can be something to do with the way it's been framed, it can be do with something the way that it's shot, and things can actually appear that look so odd.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be in raw? Wouldn't that be in raw material though, in raw video? Whereas this is the problem. This is a problem that they've created this issue for themselves and for us. I think that's the difference. That's.
You see, but what I'm saying is when you're viewing it in real time, you don't see it.
I think it's a problem that could have been so easily avoided. Gary, what are your thoughts?
I was just going to say that I'm sure that's true, and I'm glad for David's experience of the set that he bought with his own money. I'm glad he's having a positive experience. On the other hand, I do empathize, Dan, for example, like you said just now, and also you said it earlier on the Rabbi Show, that you've seen these stories so many times that you could probably recite them by memory back and forth. So you are intimately familiar with the way these stories are supposed to be. And so with the greatest respect to David, I don't think that, I think that just saying, the memory cheats is a little bit, isn't correct, because Dan, your memory isn't cheating. Your memory is probably rock solid on this entire season, as you've said. And so my question would be, first of all, I want to say that I don't know if you were about to show it. The scene that really struck me.
I can't dismiss David's.
I'm not dismissing his point, but I just don't think that the memory cheats.
I can't dismiss David's point wholly based on what he's just said, because he's quite right about moving imagery. But where I feel is the other side to that is the scene which is also everywhere, from the cliffhanger in the middle of the awakening,
this is what I was going to mention,
where the Doctor is sort of sinking into the open crevice of the wall. You've got the face of the Malice coming through, Luke, and it's belching smoke. And the Doctor puts his hands over his head, and the camera sort of goes right up to him. And the Doctor's got his hands on his head, and the smoke sort of covers him. But in the new version, and this is on full screen as well, his hair is seen to almost visibly grow, as if he's transforming into some sort of werewolf. And I think, well, it's adding something there. It's not restoring. It is generating something there. And the image is moving. It's moving very noticeably. And I'm thinking, and David's quite right. I think the things that we're pointing to here, as alarming as this is, it's sort of similar to the stuff that was in the release before. And maybe as it's played. But I think we're one release on. Has there been a caution in the use of this tool, or have they taken it further? And I think on the evidence of the cliffhanger in the middle of the awakening, Gary, is actually them taking it further. And we've got generative elements that are altering the content of an episode that lots of us know intimately well, and we know that it doesn't look right. We'll know that something doesn't look right, and so I'll be honest with you. It puts me off. It puts me off.
No,
watching
and
them.
I get it, and I think you're absolutely justified in feeling the way you do. I mean, you and fans everywhere have lived with these episodes for decades now. You know what it's supposed to be and what it's not supposed to be. I'd be really curious, in the light of now these two releases, the fact that, first of all, let me say, the fact that this is still happening, maybe to a lesser extent in this set, didn't really surprise me, because I always assumed that this set was probably well into production at the time that the firestorm over the season 13 AIUs blew up. So I knew that probably it was already too late in the day for them to do anything about this. I think that the telling will be in the next set, which was either going to be 11 or 16. You know, that'll be the test of whether, you know, they've really listened to and acknowledged this kind of firestorm at all. My question would be, I'd be curious to know what the remit of the restoration team at this point is. Dan, as you said, if their remit is from BBC Studios, it's like, you've got to bring everything, you've got to pump up the quality into as much HD as you can so it can go on the iPlayer, or if it's just to restore the image to as good a quality as you can be, but keep it what it always was. I really want to know what their remit is.
Apparently, just as David said, there's a standardization that they're going for. Luke, what are your thoughts?
I agree with David. When I watched Planet the Daleks, Jesus, too much Planet. When I watched Resurrection, it completely unfazed. I was so gripped with the story that I weren't looking for it. It's like, if you pause something, we'll look for it. It's not a form of, I know with the hair and stuff, but they're not using generative AI. They would have to have disclaimers and sign off, and that would just be an absolute.
But how can there be more hair? How can that?
To be honest, I haven't seen that clip yet, so I can't comment on that because I haven't seen that clip yet. I was having to look. I'm trying to find it online, but I couldn't then. But yeah, no. As someone who is well versed in AI, as we've all know, because I was slagged it off horrendously on this. How I've used generative AI is absolutely nothing like this at all. I've created octopuses climbing out of fish tanks. I've created a jellyfish jumping out of the Thames. I've created, some really giant jellyfish coming out of the Thames. I've created some mad stuff, and it looks nothing like this. I think the videotapes that it was recorded on at the time, I think it was standardized. I think. The DVDs are like 480p, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think standard is 480. If you put that on a 50-inch, 60-inch, 70-inch 4K Ultra TV, it's going to look absolute ass. It's going to look horrendous. They can't do it. I think they just want it to look the best it can, and unfortunately, this AI upscaling is the way to go for it. Of course, it is slightly waxy at times. I do get it, but if you're going in it looking for fingers, as someone said in the chat, if you're going in and looking, be like, I'm going to look at this and point that out and point that out. Is like,
that's what I'm very wary. I'm very wary to go down that road, because I do know there's several higher profile commentators with larger social media followings within the Doctor Who community who've been priming themselves for this for weeks, if not months, who had a major hard time with the release in October, and were very militant in their postings about it and blog posts and things like that, and they were prepared for this kind of campaign and a barrage. One guy in particular has launched a petition. You know, again, I won't name names. But it's kind of consumed his life over the last 4 or 5 days, and I think, well, on one side, part of me thinks, I'll get a life. For part, have you got other things to think about, or why waste your time going and looking for things to be angry about? But on the other hand, the flip side to this is that the nature of this line of merchandise, it does what it says on the tin. Doctor Who, the collection, limited. They sell this on exclusivity, Gary, and being targeted at a specific market. This isn't for the general market, for the general punters. This is for collectors, largely for Doctor Who collectors, kind of a minority within a minority. The people who work on this range know only too well the significance of the material and the nature, the responses of this exact audience, to the point where there's been so many replacement disc programs, David. I mean, I'd say probably half of the releases, they've had to replace discs because of fuzzy lines. did they really imagine that with the introduction of a whole new technology, set of instruments, a step in between the original raw materials from whether it's film or video and getting them on our fancy smanchy tellies and players, did they imagine that there wouldn't be a point during that process where things could potentially go awry and where people who will pick up on fuzzy lines that are there momentarily may see something that boils their piss? And I think if they hadn't have had the replacement disc programs for the things like the fuzzy lines, and sort of establishing this two-way thing whereby if you're unhappy, we will replace your discs, or it sort of implies there's this two-way thing. They have to kind of follow it through to this too. They should have expected this fandom, which we have a wealth of autists within that fandom. They're going to look for they shouldn't look for at this stuff. They shouldn't be looking at fingers. It probably wouldn't be something I would do, but they do. And I think that the guys in the restoration team, the guys at BBC Studios, they fucking know that this market looks at that stuff. And and I have to come to the conclusion that they felt, well, okay, we've got our bosses who have decided this remit, rather than advise against it and this be an exception to the rule, because this range can be an exception in some respects. I can't think of another show, for example, whereby a brand within a brand is using a logo that's not even part of the style guide anymore, but they're willing to do it with this because they know that Doctor Who fans are anally retentive and they want the same logo on each box, even though it's, so they're willing to play ball there, but not with this. And for me, this is a massive step. And the conclusion that I have to come back to is my original position from October, in that it makes this a different product than the one that I agreed to buy. And I think the scene with the hair is the place we get to where I think, okay, I don't believe in bitching about things indefinitely, David. I think you should either piss or get off the pot, and you should vote with your wallet. And if you're happy, you should continue buying them. If you're unhappy, you should really weigh up the investment of your money, because I do feel pissed off that I've spent 60 quid on this. And when I press play, I'm going to try not to look for this stuff, but I almost certainly would have noticed the hair. And I will be more primed to see it now, partly by the fandom. You think, okay, you shouldn't be part of the fandom then, but I am part of the fandom, and this is how it works. And maybe it shouldn't be like that, maybe, but it is how it works. And I just think it's incredibly naive of BBC Studios to do this late in the day in such this range. I'm aware I've been rambling on now for at least 5 minutes. But I'm so surprised because you and I we've spoken about this. And we did speak about it in October, and you and I have spoken about this privately. And I thought, well, I've gone on a real sort of journey with this. I tried to talk myself down from being too much of a piss baby about it, but I keep coming back to this point whereby the guys who are using these tools do not know what they're doing. Everything that Luke said is true. So they should have, could have held off, because this is damaging the range. I feel like I've wasted my money, and I would rather watch the fact of the matter is, I accept everything that you felt, and there's probably a significant number of people who feel as you do. Personally, I'd much rather watch my DVDs. I'd rather hit play in absolute comfort and confidence for the entire runtime. I can sit back and relax, and I'm not going to see somebody sprouting extra hair or extra digits on their hands and disappearing items, articles of clothing or accessories. I can just completely relax. And that could be
From watching it live, there is no evidence of people sprouting extra hands or fingers. There is no evidence.
Well, I was using that as just an example, really.
From my perspective of growing hair, I have watched it twice. I've had my glasses on to give me perfect visual vision. I don't wear them on stream anymore because I get reflection, and that just looks terrible. But when I watch TV, I have, and for long distance, I have glasses on. I have not seen any sprouting hair. I have not seen glasses disappear and reappear. I have seen some of my favorite season of Doctor Who. I'm just on Caves episode 3 at the moment, in the best possible quality, and I am absolutely like a kid in a sweet shop. I am having the best possible time, and I think there is a real danger that we can put a downer on this when actually I acknowledge that there are a lot of neurodiverse. I'm neurodiverse, okay? There's a lot of neurodiverse people in the world of Doctor Who that will be obsessed with this. What I would say is that I think there needs to be a little bit more contrition from the people of whom may have been involved in this reconstruction or cleaning up or whatever you want to call it, by not coming out and pulling down the shutters, barracking down the defenses and lobbing a few grenades back. I would suggest that perhaps it could be better managed with a little bit more conciliatory responses than what we got last year with season 13, and maybe a little bit of
the one guy actually told one customer to shut the fuck up. I think was an exact quote.
I don't think you should be saying that to your customers. No. I think you should be, as I said, conciliatory, and especially even to those of who may, and I'll word this carefully, take a rather excitable attitude towards the individuals, and I think that there should be more a conciliatory approach and a more understanding approach, and a more sort of, we understand that you may feel this. Well, can we please reassure you? And a more as I say, I keep coming back to the word conciliatory approach. I have watched these Blu-rays, and with my specs on very crystal clear TVs, maybe my eyes are used to seeing the way that the way that the BBC like to produce their dramas and produce their content. Maybe my eyes have gotten used to it, and my brain is telling my eyes that this is how it should be. But I haven't seen Peter Davison suddenly sprout a load of hair. I've not seen 6 fingers on somebody. I've not seen glasses reappear and disappear. And I even went back to Frontiers to watch it again. But I've watched the sequence all the way through, and I haven't noticed that. And I just think there have been some instances where I have paused ultra high HD footage, which and you look back at it and you go, my goodness me, there's something wrong in this photo, and then you roll the footage again, and you just go, my God, it must be just an optical illusion.
David, I've got one final question before we move on from this. But were you happy with the releases as they were before this entered the equation?
To be fair, I've noticed no difference. I have really noticed no difference. And if it completely changed the story, if it completely changed the meaning of the story, if we had dialogue changes and, as I say, floating things appearing certainly everywhere, I will continue to buy this series all the way through. And I do not feel, and believe you me, I'm a northerner, so I get very upset with spending money in the first place, let alone even if it's food. Okay, I do not feel at all that I have had £54.99 ripped off from me. In fact, I feel it's the best 54 quid I have spent, 55 quid I have spent in a very, very long time. And I'll continue to support the range.
Absolutely
but,
gorgeous.
But I do think that the people involved who've been telling people to fuck off need to seriously sort their shit out and be far more conciliatory to their customers.
Because David, they're autists as well. They're in many respects, these are people with very particular ways of behaving. We're all on the spectrum. And it sort of shows itself in different ways. And I think that this is a fight. This is a conflict of interests and tastes that we needn't have had. I think with something that was established. Luke, have you got a final word on this topic you want to?
I have. How much? Like £57, £54?
$54.99.
Dan, you were not sure. I say it is absolutely worth it just for the escape rooms, and that's it.
I've always wondered who likes those because there's nothing I like less. All that stuff.
Me and Mr. Carly, bottle of whiskey, and a doctor in escape room. That is generally what we do all the time. And now we got 2 on this one. I will pay £100 for this. Okay, just for my enjoyment of it.
Something for everyone. The artwork is as beautiful as ever by Lee Binding, Gary. Now, he never lets us down. I mean, if you've got a final statement that you'd like to make,
I do. First of all, I think this is my favorite piece of cover art of all of the sets.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Second is that I think that I agree with David. It's such an individual response that the people in power shouldn't be like slagging off the people that are laying down their hard-earned money for it. They should be, at the very least, saying, okay, we're sorry that's been your experience. I would hope that after the blowback to season 13, as this was still in production, that at the very least they went back and just did at least another QA pass, if even a pro forma one, just to make doubly sure after season 13 blew up. That would be my hope, that at least they tried. And my final thought is that I haven't watched it yet, but the only thing that's really going to upset me is if they monkey with and do something with Nicola Bryant as she's kind of cradling Peter Davison during her regeneration. If they do something with that scene, I'll really be mad. But that will be the scene I've got to. And one last thing is that I actually think we owe it to everybody. I think we owe it to everybody watching to say that we need to test the process ourselves. So I think for next week's show, I think we need to replace Luke with an AI to see if we can tell the difference. As like the final test to see before we pronounce our final judgment.
Shock after shock, Luke. Shock after shock.
Yeah, I mean, but very quickly on that as well. If you look at it, the level of course, you're going to get waxy faces. It's like I shoot on a 12K camera. I can see every pore you ever have. These were not. These are very low res cameras. If you're going to use an AI upscale, there's very little detail there anyway for it to put detail back in. So everything is going to be upscaled. It is going to be glossy. So it's just the level of detail that's in the film. It's just not there. It's working with what it has. So that was and that's all I got to say. And fuck you, Gary.
Okay. So no AI. I got you.
Doctor Who the Collection.
Gary, fuck you.
About it, isn't it? Doctor Who the Collection Season 21 limited edition 10-disc box set available now from all the usual retailers, whichever is your preference. Various ones have got different codes and vouchers and bits and pieces, so you might be able to knock it down by a few quid if you're lucky. Let us know which bargain you managed to bag, how much you get off, and what do you think about the content about season 21 generally, from right the way back in 1984. Were you there, or are you way too young like our Luke? And then there's the special features too. So have you watched the Warriors of the Deep special edition yet? What do you make of all the rest of it? And that question too of AI. Is artificial intelligence becoming the blight of this range fairly late in the day, Or do we all need to accept that times change and that this is innovation, and maybe even applaud BBC Studios for being willing to employ new techniques to bring this range up to scratch and future-proof the material for wherever it may end up next? There'll be lots of opinions about this, and bring them all, by all means, in the comments. We'll almost certainly come back around to it at some point, because the sad fact of the matter is I can't see this one getting shut down anytime soon. Season 21 was a very heady time to be a Doctor Who fan. I say bye-bye to my Doctor, but Colin Baker was a colourful replacement.
Oh, good Lord.
And I do love his contribution almost as much, in all truth. And it's been fun revisiting all of this. And I am undecided about the box set in light of what we've just discussed. But then again, it's early days, so I'll let you know where I end up with that. The push and the pull, the cut and the thrust, all the confusion in my mind. I'm all over the place, everybody, absolutely all over the place. But I think I'd rather be in 1984, Gary, where things were a lot easier, and all I really had to worry about wasn't any of this AI stuff. It was actually just the tracking on my VHS, and whether the new Doctor really was a wrong-un, like he seemed to be. Things were a lot simpler way back then.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Sue Molden. On behalf of the team, I'd like to say how overwhelmed and extremely grateful we are to everyone who has donated so far. The response has been magnificent, and we are especially grateful to those who have pledged regular donations. A big thank you from all of us at Film is Fabulous.
There I was saying we wouldn't get sucked into that AI discussion. We sort of did anyway, like a time corridor. It came and it sunk its teeth into your scrot, didn't it? And dragged you back down. But obviously this is what the Doctor Who fandom is talking about at the moment. And maybe we'll go back there at some point in the future. We'll see if we can reach out to if we can get some answers. But it will never dull my enthusiasm for these stories, for the sense of occasion around these releases. And it certainly won't for 1984 and all things associated. It was really good to share some of it. Again, I could have gone on all evening just talking about 1984, to tell you the truth, David. Shocking.
Well, the thing is, it just reminds me of a Doctor Who joke I once heard, okay?
Go on.
And it reminds me of how many Doctor Who fans does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is one, because any more than one, and you'll get complete darkness, because if you've got two people, one will argue that the original was the better than the new one, and then there'll be a complete argument, and the second person will take the new one out and try and put the old one back in that's not working anymore, and you'll just end up in complete darkness. The fact is, we are an interesting bunch of whom can never actually really agree on absolutely anything, which makes it wonderful, yet quite tense at the same time. So I'm just happy to be here in 2026 and to be able to have an archive that is ever growing, and long may the releases continue.
And really quickly,
1984.
Really quickly to that point, my last thing I want to say is to piggyback on what David just said. Isn't it amazing that with this release, we now have the entirety of the JNT era on Blu-ray?
It is nice to look across that shelf and to see, all of basically the whole of my childhood, really. I mean, when I became besotted with the series, which was in 1984, I've been watching it for a few years, but
I'm pleased we're in 2026, because we've got Luke.
Go on, one more time.
If we were in 1984, we wouldn't have Luke.
Or I like the Karate Kid, so there we go.
We wouldn't have Luke if we were in 1984. We wouldn't have Luke if we were in 1984. So I'm pleased. That's why I'm pleased I'm in 2026, because we've got Luke.
Can we do a
Cosmos without Luke? Scarcely worth thinking about. There you go. Let us know what you think about all of this. You know what to do by now. It's very, very simple. Come and say hello. Hello.
No.
Come and say hello. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Come and say hello. Hello, everybody. Come and say hello. Use your places.
Is it me you're
Instagram.
looking for? Yeah.
Stalk that blind student of yours. Yeah, stalk that blind student.
Is that supposed to be Lionel Richie in the sculpture?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the whole gag about it. She does a sculpture, a blind girl. Does a
Okay, I
sculpture
thought that
of
was
Lionel
honestly. I thought that was. Well, I won't say.
It's
looks
the
a bit
video-
honestly, I thought that was Lou Ferrigno from The Incredible Hulk.
It looks a bit
mate,
like Macho Man Randy Savage.
The
What,
video
dead?
is probably the video of Hello is probably the best unintended comedy 4 minutes you will ever see. It's quite disturbing that the fact that Lionel Richie is stalking one of his blind students.
Wow, really? Okay.
You know, and then she does that clay model bust of his face that looks nothing like him. You know, and it's just hilarious and it's disturbing on many levels.
I was touched back then, and I remain touched. I remain touched now, in the nicest possible way, of course. You can come and get in touch with us. Of course, you can flip the switches, pull the levers. Cheer up, Peter. It wasn't that bad, was it? Instagram and X at Type 40 Doctor Who, as ever. Join the discussion in the Type 40 Facebook group. We are talking about the box set and all of these controversial wrinkles and conflicts that have come. God, see, these. I keep coming back to. We needn't have this. This is needless bullshit, needless conflict. This is what I keep coming back to all the time. Why now? Why now? Hey, maybe you've got an answer to. Come and tell me in the Type 40 Facebook group, or you can leave it to us in vocal form. Verbalize your views, your predictions, your rants and raves through SpeakPipe. Link for all of that is in the description, as ever. The season 21 box set, yeah, it's everywhere right now. Order it from your preferred retailer of choice and put a smile on Peter Davison's kindly face. We'll see you there for more next time, I suppose. What a round it has been. Yeah, I love these event shows, and I love the sense of occasion around these releases. I want to say thank you to everybody in the comments section for all of your questions, queries, your rants, and your raves. As ever, we know this is a sort of contentious topic, and we understand why it's wound a great many people up. 2 more left in the colour series: is season 11 and season 16 to come, isn't it? And then the black and white stuff. I have no idea what's next. I'm not going to pretend that I have any kind of inside track on that. And to be honest, I don't mind, because I buy them all anyway. But I have up to now. I must admit, I'm not the happiest of campers right now. But spending time in '84. That's never a bad time. In many respects, I don't feel like I've ever left. To tell you the truth. But 1996 is on the horizon. Of course, the TV movie out in May, I think. The Blu-ray Steelbook that we talked about before will almost certainly be coming back round to that again. So that's something more to look forward to in just two months' time, everybody. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. No. Oh, you were? That's good.
You were. Alive, then.
This is the longest edition of Type 40 Live that we've put out in quite a while. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know where the last 3 hours has gone. Thank you for the comments, folks. We sincerely appreciate it. Yeah. Cheers, David. I mean, you're wrong, obviously, but you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Hey,
look, sincerely,
but
thank you for coming and for representing that side of this argument so roundedly and so well.
Thank you. And look, we've all got different opinions, and it's the thing is that they are opinions, and look, I'm not trying to take away from anybody's experience of it at all. I just happen to say that my experience is different, so that's absolutely fine. And if you feel so angry about it all in the chat, then that's up to you to take forward. But as I said before, you should not swear at your customer base and accuse them of well, not accuse them, but You should, for me, if your customer base is a certain section of your customer base is saying something, you should listen to them and you should respond in a conciliatory tone.
Unless it's Gary Akers.
And he can get the full. He can just get the full. He can just get
my lawyer on the
couple
phone.
of fingers. Yeah.
So
yeah, he can get the full. He can get the two fingers. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Dan. And I'm looking forward to season 11 next, where they have the most awful AI dinosaurs. I'm just kidding. Could you imagine? Oh, my goodness me. I would be upset if
things could get lively. A reminder, support Film is Fabulous if you can. Link in the description to that too. That story, I think it's stopped breaking now, but there've been further information, further releases, further press releases, I should say, from Film is Fabulous about how they do what it is that they do. And their event sold out in sort of about an hour flat. So there'll be lots to talk about when it comes to that as well. We'll be sure to keep an eye on everything going on at Film is Fabulous, whether it concerns Doctor Who specifically or not, because it's important work that they're doing. And we appreciate them, and we view it as our sort of, we're well placed, I suppose, to debate some of that, answer some of our own questions, and maybe some of yours too. So we get to a place of greater understanding together, I think would be an ideal. But in the meantime, keep following us on our socials, and please like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Check you're still subscribed. We've got a lot of new names this last week in particular, considering all of these topics, and hit the cloister bell to get all the notifications about what we're doing next and when we're doing it. Gary, all this time, I haven't complimented you on your cap, but you should know by now that I love it, because I love most of them. But thanks for bringing the cap, and thanks for bringing yourself as too, mate.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. What else could I wear on a day like today other than the best logo ever for the show? No, it's been great. It's been, even with, the controversy, it's always an event, to get a new box set and dive into it. And it's been great to hear everybody, and I mean everybody, everybody's opinions. And of course, even if it's the real Luke and not an AI Luke. But no, it's been, I look forward to the next event. And, it's like I said, it's one of these things, you just get this and it kind of makes your whole week, even with, and our love for Doctor Who is such that even with the controversy, there's still a lot on something like this to love. And and
last but by no means least, yes, he wasn't alive then, but he most certainly is now.
Right, alive now.
Thank you, Luke Walters, for being here, the chief hooligan that you are. So we'll have to do next time. Maybe we'll talk about stuff that was on when you were around. We'll try and make up for it. But,
and can I just say that I'm sorry, Luke. Can I just say we have to do a game show at some point called "Was Luke Alive?" Where Dan, you throw out historical events or names of TV shows or whatever, and the question is was Luke alive then or not? And that can be our game show. Was Luke alive?
He has to hold up a sign saying alive, not alive.
Yes, alive or not alive.
A paddle.
Yes, a paddle.
I like
You're
it.
really scraping the barrel in this wilderness here. Jesus.
I tell you what, that works. That works.
Oh God!
Thank you, gentlemen,
hooligans.
and thank you to everybody who's joined us there in the live chat for this monster of a show. That's good reason. 1984, time of my life. Still love that season, no matter what they do to it. Happy new box set release week, everybody. We always have the time. If you have the space here at Type 40 Live, we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.
Go well.